Just making sure the superintendent is here. Good evening. Good evening. My name is Ann Savage. I'm the president of the City School District of Albany Board of Education. On behalf of the board, I welcome everyone to our meeting. This is our second try at a web-based meeting. Last time, many people connected from home, and we hope that will be the case this time as well. Instructions for how to connect are at albanyschools.org BOE. So if you are listening at home and become aware of anyone having trouble connecting, please point them in that direction or let us know using the feedback form on the district website. Our meetings are always recorded, and those audio files are uploaded a few days after the meeting, so those who are not listening in on real time will still have the opportunity to hear the conversation. Meeting by web is part of our effort to ensure that our meetings remain accessible to the public while protecting the health of our community and doing our part to reduce the transmission of COVID-19. Normally, by law, we meet in person, but as a result of Governor Cuomo's Executive Order 202.1, we now may legally meet by telephone or video conference, and we plan to do that until further notice. For any members of the public joining from home, you can also access the documents we are reviewing tonight at albanyschools.org/BOE. I hope everyone will be patient with us as we work through any technical or procedural glitches as we experiment with this new format. We invite those of you who choose to join us as we stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, and indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. In addition to saying the pledge, we always start our meetings by restating the school district's mission, which is to work in partnership with our diverse community to engage every learner in a robust educational program designed to provide the knowledge and skills necessary for success. We always start our meetings with a report from the superintendent. This will take sort of two parts tonight, a very brief superintendent's update, followed after our action agenda by a more extensive update on the ways the district is handling this unusual situation we find ourselves in. So Superintendent Adams, your report.
Thank you. Good evening, Madam President, members of the board. I would like to begin my report tonight by recognizing 6 Albany High School students who have been recognized for their artistic talents. These 6 student artists have had their work accepted for the annual High School Regional Juried Art Exhibition. That is an outstanding recognition, and I would like to congratulate each of these students. Sarahi Diaz, Natalie Pina, Maxine Sarfo, Janelle Nuki, and Ifani Angel, and Jemiah Williams. Jemiah also has been recognized from the entire group of Capital Region participants as a recipient of the prestigious OPACA Award. Our students' pieces will be showcased along with other works of students from 24 other districts. Since the OPACA Gallery is currently closed due to COVID-19, the event organizers are planning an online showcase. I would also like to share an important reminder about the 2020 U.S. Census. In spite of the closures and significant precautions in place due to COVID-19, the census is still underway. The Census Bureau is carefully monitoring the situation and follows the guidance of the federal, state, and local health authorities. While you won't see census workers in neighborhoods going door to door during these uncertain times, it remains critical that all Albany residents complete the census. You can do this online, by phone, or by mail. Responding now will minimize the need for census workers to be out in our communities, following up later this spring and summer. You can help our community get the funding that we need and deserve and help the Census Bureau adhere to the social distancing guidelines by responding to the census online at 2020census.gov. Finally, just a reminder that our next Board of Education meeting is coming up next Tuesday evening, April 7th. The budget will be our focus at that meeting, which will also be held. We will also have held a video conference, and we will continue to adhere to the social distancing guidelines. Tuesday's meeting will begin at 6:30 p.m. Please visit albanyschools.org for more information about how to watch the meeting via live stream. This concludes the superintendent's report, and we will share more details about the operational and academic process related to the COVID-19 school closures later in this meeting. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your report. We look forward to the next portion of that. We normally use this time of our meeting to accept comment from the public. We really appreciate and welcome community input about the decisions we are making. Because tonight we are only meeting for the second time by web, we have not yet been able to offer an opportunity for live public comment. We continue to work on that and hope to have that for a future meeting. We did accept comments, as we always do, by email, phone, and postal mail. Please do continue to provide us with your thoughts, members of the public. It really does help us formulate our own questions and our thoughts about what is happening in the district. For members of the public who would like to provide public comment in future meetings, our email addresses, phone numbers, and postal mail addresses are all available at albanyschools.org BOE. That brings us to the part of our meeting we call routine consent. During this portion of the meeting, we approve routine matters for the district. These include items like contracts, field trips, personnel matters, and the like. Each board member reviews each item carefully, but we vote on them as a group with no discussion. That allows us to use our meeting time more efficiently. Nonetheless, each board member has the option to set aside any routine consent item in order to require a separate discussion and a separate vote on that item. With that introduction, I will now entertain a motion to adopt the routine consent agenda. Can I get a motion? Hold on one second, I can't see anybody. Can I get a motion?
Aye.
Motion from Ms. Wilson, second. Ms. Mann. Now I'm going to, unlike when we meet in our general meeting, I'm going to call for a roll call vote. I'm sorry. Are there any set-asides? Seeing none. All in favor of adopting the routine consent agenda? Mr. El-Menyawi?
Aye.
Ms. Mann?
Aye.
Ms. Krejci? Ms. Krejci? Ms. Krejci, I can't hear you. Are you muted? Oh. Well, you're still muted, but I see your hand is up. We'll take that as a yes vote. Dr. Chatoor?
Aye.
Ms.
Aye.
Wilson?
Aye.
And I also vote aye.
Aye.
Let's just take one moment. Ms. Krejci, can I just make sure I can hear you?
Yes, hold on.
Oh.
Are we live now? Am I unmuted? It just has a
You
little
are
bit of a
now
lag.
unmuted. Yes, I can hear you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Great.
Okay.
Thanks. Myself. now.
So that was a unanimous vote in favor of routine consent, which brings us, which is the discussion of the COVID-19 operational academic update, first on operations. Superintendent Adams, did you want to start us off with this?
Yes, good evening again. We're going to go ahead and get started. I believe the presentation will come up shortly. But we are starting with just looking at, this is a two-part presentation, and we're going to stop after the operations portion so that if there are questions that need to be answered, we can absolutely do that. And then we'll go into the academic component because we have quite a few attachments with that that we may want to just kind of toggle through so that you can see that information firsthand. So as we begin, we know that even though we are in this setting, we are still looking to ensure that we are meeting the needs of our diverse community and engaging our learners in a robust educational program. And so as we look at that and the impact of COVID-19, we have had to address not only the academic side, but also the operational side as we look to meet the goals. And we look to still increase student achievement by closing the gap, ensuring that we are delivering quality instruction through a different format, which is our Google Classroom platform, building our leadership capacity. How are we leading our organization in an online format, which is very different for many of our administrators and our leaders as we work in a new environment? How do we then engage our families and empower them in a setting like this that physically creates a distance, but yet how do we help them still feel engaged with their children and connected to the teachers and the principals and administrators at the school, as well as our support staff members? And then looking at how we are still able to partner with our community through volunteer efforts, through different areas where we have been able to engage our community so that we can still foster those meaningful relationships. And so with that, we move forward with our objective, and we look at our new executive order 202.11, which has brought about some changes with regard to some of the things that we need to do. We know that
I can't hear the superintendent.
Superintendent Adams, I know I can't hear you, and I don't believe Dr. Chatur can hear you.
I can't hear her either.
Neither can I.
So let's take a brief pause while the superintendent gets back connected. Something clearly has gone off with her meeting.
Just for future reference, I have noticed there's been several instances of lag, so we may want to just be forgiving with time when we're doing our presentations or asking our questions, because I just seen that a few times since we've gone live.
Yeah, I've noticed that as well, but I don't even see the superintendent.
Yeah, several
Superintendent says, let me know she's gonna log back in. She let me know by text that she's logging back in now.
And I can't hear you.
For those of you who are just joining us, the superintendent is logging back in. She had some sort of technical difficulties and she's getting back online as quickly as she can.
if you can hear me, I am back.
Perfect.
Welcome back.
Okay, thank you. So we'll pick up with the slide that with the COVID-19 and then the next slide after that. Okay, so where I left off was how we as a district are partnering and we are in collaboration with NYSED and with BOCES, Capital Region BOCES, with regard to just making sure that we are following as information is coming rapidly, that we are on top of all of the information in terms of what we need to do in dealing with all the different things that are coming about, the directions that are coming about, and how we address different situations. We have our administrative structure and logistics, and later on, our assistant superintendents will address that because they are working very closely with our administrators in passing down information to understand how do you structure your communication with the people that you supervise. We have daily notifications for our community as well as for all district staff. And so every day, roughly after 4 o'clock, and sometimes it's 7 or 8 o'clock, depending on how much information we have to disseminate that day. But we look to make sure that we have the most accurate information coming out daily for our staff members, for our parents, and for our students. So what you're going to see, this is one of the things that we are continuing to do. And of course, I have to give kudos to Lisa Finkenbinder and our food service workers for being ready on day one, March 16th, when our schools were closed, that they were ready to serve our students. And while the numbers were low, as you can see, our numbers have increased over time. And since March 16th, currently, we have served approximately, well, we've served 38,197 meals. We do serve our students over the weekend. That food is given on a Friday through the weekend. We will have a spring break schedule coming forward because over spring break, we will continue to serve our students. And so that schedule will be communicated to our families and to our district personnel so that we can make sure that we know what we're doing as we continue to serve our students. We have been addressing the digital divide, and you'll hear a little bit more about that in the academic presentation. We did conduct a survey of our families. We had roughly 7,139 of them completed the surveys. You can see the number of devices that were needed, as well as of the number of devices that were needed, 576 families needed internet access. And so thank you to Mr. Kent Baker, who is behind the scenes now, helping to keep us going through our virtual meeting. But through the work with his department, we were able to distribute roughly 1,500 Chromebooks in 2 days for our families. We still have a significant number of families that we have to do that continued outreach with, and we will be doing that. We are looking to engage our schools now at a more local level with reaching out to those specific families where we know who the students are who did not pick up Chromebooks. And then we will make sure that we make arrangements for those families to come and retrieve those, or they may be delivered. But that really does depend on the process that we have in place now in order to dwindle down to the school level so that we have more of a personal touch with those students who still need the Chromebooks. Internet access, we've had several options. We have put that out to our families. The city of Albany has free Wi-Fi. And so in specific areas, we know that that is in specific areas. So we're making our families aware of that. We have a Spectrum offer that is free for roughly 60 days. T-Mobile is looking to, if you are a T-Mobile customer, they will increase your the amount of data that you have on your phone to roughly 2. They'll do it by 2 or 20 gigs. I'm sorry, it's 20 gigs so that the students can use the phone as a hotspot to do their homework. And we are also looking at a partnership with T-Mobile with regard to providing possible hotspots in the near future. So those are some things that we have just in the works that we are trying to assist our families. We also put together a handout that we were given by T-Mobile that explains each of the carriers' offers that they have been directed to do, so that they can assist families and assist students with getting their classwork done, and how to expand some of that data that you have on your phones. Our next steps, and thank you very much for approving in routine consent our Smart Schools funding. This is an effort that we are engaging in as we move toward that 1-to-1 ratio of every student having a Chromebook. Now, this is some time away. It's not happening tomorrow, but it does put us in a position where we can start that process of getting to a 1-to-1 ratio of students with Chromebooks. And then we're looking at additional access options so that each student would be able to access the internet and have that capability to get their work done at home. We also have childcare information, and we have roughly two childcare partnerships in this way, where the YMCA is operating at 6 sites. And we are also going through the Office of Child and Family Services. There's a survey for families to complete. Now, one of the complications that we have with our YMC sites is that we did not have a large number of families choose this option because it was specifically geared toward our emergency and healthcare professionals. So there was low enrollment. People were concerned about health and safety. And then for some, there were some financial concerns. So we're still partnering with the Y. We're asking that people still call and register through the Y, or they go online and register with the Y. And then they will be routed to various sites that still have space. And if in the event we have to open up sites, we are absolutely able to do that. But that all happens through the Y. And parents will need to complete the survey with the Office of Child and Family Services. So I'll stop now before we go into the academic component, and I'll see, are there any questions?
All right, board colleagues, as always, we will try and give everyone an opportunity to ask their first question before anyone has a chance to ask the second. For this portion of the questions, we're going to stick to the operational topics. So that's food, maintenance. I'm getting some feedback. I'm not sure who that is. Superintendent? Oh, yep, that's much better. Thank you. So things like food and maintenance, non-instructional things, because we'll get a chance to ask questions about the instruction. Ms. Wilson, did you have a question?
Yes, thank you. So first, I want to say congratulations in that it's super impressive. So thank you to you and the entire staff for the gargantuan feat of distributing 38,000 meals and 1,500 Chromebooks in terms of operations. So thank you for that. And I'm certain our community thanks you too. My first question is whether we're, in addition to the materials I see being distributed by SNN and text, as well as on the website and the Facebook, are we still keeping up with pace with any kind of paper communication going home?
So one of the things that we did at the very beginning, March 16th, we did on the 13th of March, we sent home print materials roughly enough for 2 weeks. And then that week, Monday and Tuesday, we mailed home additional materials. That was the math information that we mailed. One of the things that we've done at our food distribution sites, because as you know, we have to abide by not having large gatherings. And so our food distribution sites are kind of the hub for when we need to get materials out. But one of the things that we have been working with our instructional supervisors and with our coaches and teachers is getting print material ready for this coming week so that print material can be available when families are coming to pick up food. Now we have a number of sites that are already doing that. For example, Arbor Hill is already doing that. At Ash, they have also had materials available for when parents come to pick up the food or students come to pick up the food. They do have print materials, but what we're doing now at each of our food distribution sites, there will be print materials there for families to take home.
Okay, and this is not instructional information. This is just the same thing about OCFS and all the other things we're doing.
I'm sorry,
My question was not about instructional, so I'm so sorry. It was more so whether the same information is being disseminated by paper in any form, whether through a partner or whether
I'm
through a
sorry.
partner or with, yeah.
Yes, okay, so we have coordinated and worked with the Y. We've worked with the mayor's office to get information out to those respective healthcare professionals, emergency personnel, so that they can access the childcare.
Ms. Krejci, did you have a question?
I did, and my question was about I was looking at the numbers for the food service, and I did notice, well, the first, just really quick questions. The first was, wouldn't the numbers of breakfast and lunch pretty much always be the same? Are the larger numbers on Fridays more people coming, or you're distributing 3 meals as opposed to, or you're distributing 3 days of meals or 2 days of meals instead of just 1?
So it's a
And then
combination. I'm sorry.
And then how many meals, do we have a breakdown of how many meals are delivered versus picked up?
So this includes everything. And yes, we do keep those numbers, but for this presentation, I wanted to give you the whole numbers. But our numbers for pickup and the grab and go, both of them are growing. We have 9 routes with our buses that go out to deliver the food. Okay. So we have all of those numbers are together. And so to answer the weekend question, it's a little bit of both. There may be additional people coming. However, it may be that we're doubling up on the meals for them to take over the weekend. And what we do so that those numbers, yes, they are the same. If you come to pick up lunch, you get the breakfast for the next morning. So they're packaged together.
Okay, thank you.
If I could just add to that, the daily number for meal delivery is about between 14 and 1,500 meals. Between 700 and 750 students. And then what they've done the last 2 weeks is on Thursday, they double up and provide Thursday and Friday's meals so that on Friday, they can provide Saturday and Sunday's meals. So the Thursday and Friday for delivery they're both double rounds or double deliveries.
Oh, thank you, Ron.
Ms. Romagnoli, did I see your mic go off? Are you interested, or your mute go off? Or you have a question?
Thank you, Ron. That did answer actually part of my question. So Thursday and Friday, we're sending out 2 days worth of meals. Are we doing that on any of the other days just to help people stay indoors longer? So you see what I'm saying? So instead of going Monday and Tuesday and Wednesday in a row, are we able to give people 2 meals on Monday so they don't have to come in on Tuesday?
Some of that has to do with our ordering process and the amount of food that we get, because some of it we have to be very careful of how long we have it in our possession, as well as when we're sending it out. But some of that has to do with the ordering of the food and what we have on hand at any given time. There are some times when we have doubled up on the meals depending on the day of the week. But absolutely, that's one of the things that we're looking at over spring break. And so we'll have to see how that goes as we work with our supplier.
Thank you. And is this specifically regarding the food, or are we talking the delivery as well of Chromebooks? Can we discuss that?
I'm not sure I understand the question.
It's not even a question. I just basically wanted to say thanks to Spectrum for offering that 60 days for internet for our students, and to the City of Albany for offering the free Wi-Fi, and T-Mobile. In terms of what we've got left for the delivery of the Chromebooks, there are 800 that are still needed. do we know what the holdup is with those, or
There's
Are
not
they-
necessarily a holdup. We're just having to make communication with the families because if the way in which we were able to complete the surveys was through one-to-one outreach. And that was the information that we collected. And so now we have to do the one-to-one outreach again, just to see what's going on, because these are the ones that have not been picked up. Initially, we were told that families needed the computers. And so we had everyone identified with the computer. The names of the students were on there. We could scan them, package them. They walk in and they could get their computer. These are the ones that have not been picked up. So there may have been a scheduling issue. I mean, we don't know what the gap is. That's what we're going to be in the process of finding out. And then we would have to make those arrangements for how the family would secure the device.
thank you.
Dr. Chatur, did you have a question?
Yes, I did. First and foremost, I mean, great job. And it's awesome to see that, everybody, school district, staff, city coming together and providing these services. My question is going to be in terms of the childcare. Well, we talk about the healthcare workers, of course, but then there's all these other essential businesses which have people going out to work. So are those people also eligible for these childcares?
If they go into the survey, and so let me clarify, I'm going to do a little backup and then come forward. As the school district, we are simply the host of the site. The coordination of those efforts fall within either the Y and then largely coordinated through the Office of Child and Family Services. So that's why we have put out the information with the survey, because in terms of determining where a person might go, absolutely, they would need to fill in that survey. And then at that end, they would be able to say yes or no in terms of qualifying for the service.
Thank you.
Wasn't another aspect of the healthcare workers mandated by the governor, and that was the difference?
Yes, that is the difference. But in terms of a school district, we were, it was determined via the executive.
We lost her.
Looks like the
Superintendent Adams, did we lose you?
Yes, you lost your connection. Because that mandate that the governor put forward was specifically for people working in the healthcare field. But then he
Yes.
also made everybody else essential in terms of whether you're working in a grocery store or what have you. Those people have kids too, and that's why my question.
No, I totally understand. And I seen in the release that we did give out the OCFS information to families. So hopefully they fill that out and follow up.
All right, folks, we're just going to take another meeting break while we wait for the superintendent to get herself back
I'm
on.
here. I'm here.
You're here. Well, hooray.
Okay, so the next portion of the
Oh,
presentation.
wait, I don't think we're quite done with questions.
Oh, okay.
We had lost track of you. Ms. Mann, did you have a question?
No, I did not.
Okay. Can I ask a follow-up question on the food? I know that the interest in the home delivery for food was very significant and it filled up very quickly. What's in store in terms of expanding that for additional people who need to take access of that, need access to that?
Sending the survey out again so that additional families can sign up. We needed to make sure that with the first wave that we were able to manage that and then look at what we needed. And then now we're going to open that back up.
Okay, thank you. So that will be sometime in the next week, couple days, something like that.
And
All right. Ms. Smith, do you have a question?
Yes, please. First, I have to say I'm the work that our staff is doing. Just everyone, kudos to everyone. The partnerships that are just delighted for all of that, and just
Vicky, you seem to be muting yourself periodically.
I'm sorry. My apologies. I just want to say first that I wanted to I'm so moved by the work that our district is doing at all levels, and also with the partnerships that are continuing, that are evolving, and just really feels great about what we're able to do for our community. And I know we're trying to do a much more, whatever we can do to be supportive of all of our youngsters, our families, and our teachers. So I just wanted to give a shout out there. I did have a question on the childcare. I understood you to say that the cost might be prohibitive for some of the healthcare workers via the YMCA route. Does that mean that should we open any school sites that cost might be a little less?
So we have the school sites, and they do a sliding scale, and there are some scholarships that are available. So it really does just depend. Those were just some of the reasons that people were not taking the childcare. But I'll give you a broader perspective. All of the districts in the capital region have the childcare provisions, and they're doing very similar things that what we are doing. And in the region, there was a very low turnout with regard to people looking to put their kids in that childcare. So there are various reasons by which people are choosing that. But as the capital region with all of the school districts combined, the total numbers were very, very low.
Great, thank you. Madam President, I don't know if you're going around just one more, but I had like one more question.
I am going to go around. You want to ask another question? Then I think Mr. El-Menyawi had a question.
Sure. And Superintendent, I wanted to just check in. How are we doing with volunteers? Are we still in need of more? I've had a couple of inquiries, and so I wanted to, I know who's responsible, but I wanted to just get a sense of whether I should encourage them to make contact with the district.
So one of the things that we've done to help break down some of the work that we're engaging in is we have partnered with Christ Church, and they have been really helpful in managing that. And so number one, we have to limit the number of volunteers on any given day. And so the numbers that you see are the total numbers that we need over time. So when you look at that first extension, and we were looking for 300 volunteers, so you're looking at every day, roughly 15 volunteers to assist with 7 sites for food distribution. And so that really breaks it down to only 4 to 6 volunteers on any given day. And so I have to break down those numbers. When people hear those large numbers, I don't want there to be the misconception that we have 300 people showing up on any given day to do the work, because now we are out of compliance with our social distancing, et cetera. So those numbers that you see are over time. We build a schedule. We also have our staff that are here. For example, our hall monitors are assisting with food distribution and sometimes with the food delivery. We have our SROs that are helping to deliver food. So we have mobilized quite a few people, but we're still making sure that we have not over mobilized. So the route that people would need to take, if you could direct them through Christ Church, that would be very helpful, because Jonathan is able to manage that and keep that schedule, which has really been a big help for us, because in combination with everything else that we have to do, it's just really valuable to have that source.
That's great. Thank you so much.
Mr. El-Menyawi, did I see your mute go off? Did you have a question?
Yes, thank you. Just to circle back onto the Chromebook topic. Now, I know that there are larger families with several students in the district, and they are, I've heard from a few of them that they're worried that the one Chromebook is not enough, and it's going to create some problems, sharing issues with families that have students, 3 or 4 students in the household. You touched upon something about getting every student connected to a Chromebook. What was that? Can you reiterate that for me?
Yes, I can. So we do understand that there are some challenges. However, we have to look at what we're able to do. And so based on the capacity of the computers that we have and the Chromebooks that we have available, if you recall, a few months ago, we were talking about, we were roughly at a 1-to-3, 1-to-2 ratio. We were not at a 1-to-1 ratio with regard to every student being able to have a Chromebook. However, it is still a goal that we are working toward. It's part of our overall technology plan. It's part of our integrated technology delivery of instruction. Those are things that we have been working toward. And so based on the capacity of what we have right now, we were able to prioritize through the survey 1 computer per household. And so now when you see the academic component that will come later, you're going to see some of those suggested schedules for elementary students, the schedules for middle school students and high school students. You're going to see how with those types of schedules, there may be some flexibility when one student is on the computer, another student would not be. And so that structure kind of builds in a little bit of that time management piece. What we have engaged in is the Smart Scholars, the Smart Schools funding, which will help us get closer to that goal of 1-to-1 computers, but that will be over time. The delivery won't happen tomorrow. It'll be down the line, and it will take us several months to make that happen, but we are at least able to start on that pathway now.
Ms.
Thank you.
Wilson, did you have a question?
Yes, just from an operational standpoint, I was curious about the point of contact. I did see that as much as possible, the idea is to not have parents do the legwork, to have like whoever interfaces with them possibly fill out surveys on their behalfs and things of that nature. And I was just wondering, is the point of contact the teacher or is it the school? Have we adopted like a no wrong door philosophy? So I was just curious about that.
So one of the things that we're doing, I'm going to probably answer that through the process. And if I don't answer the question, please let me know. But one of the things that we're doing is, as students become familiar with Google Classroom and they are interacting with their teachers, we're going to see which students are not engaging. At that juncture, we have our hall monitors, and this is like within a day or so, and this is a very high level explanation. However, at that juncture, there will be outreach to the family to find out why they're not, connected. Other than the process of you didn't come and pick up a computer, then we have people working on that. Then the next way is, we're seeing you're not connecting. What's the disconnect? So that could be a teaching assistant, that could be a hall monitor, that could be the homeschool coordinator, making that direct connection with the home to find out what are those gaps. And then that's where we start to determine what are the resources that are needed at that particular point. So I don't have the complete answer, because the complete answer would be predicated upon the response from the family.
That makes perfect sense. Thank you.
Ms.
Superintendent.
Tracy, did you have another question?
It's a quick follow-up on Hassan's question about families with multiple students. And I'm wondering, do we have the capacity, for example, I don't know how many families have 3 or more students, but is there a way we could maybe, because I can see 2 children sharing a Chromebook, but couldn't really see 3 or 4. So I'm wondering if there's a way we can kind of try to keep it to a 1-to-2 ratio and provide a second Chromebook for those large families. I don't know how many larger families we have.
We would not be able to accurately respond to that until we get through this initial process. It is something that can be considered, but I would hate to say yes to that, and the answer ends up being that we can't manage that or facilitate that in any way, but it's definitely something that we can consider.
Understood. I think it was more of a suggestion on my part than a question. That might be the priority for whatever hardware we have left.
Thank you.
Vicki, I think you had a question.
Yes, thank you. And really an expansion on Ms. Wilson's question. And Superintendent, perhaps there's no need for this, but I wondered if you could maybe enlighten me. Do you think there's a need, or have you seen this yet, of a essential number for community or parents or folks to call should they need something? I mean, it seems to me that that teacher and, you know, and if others are following up on, you know, on the family, that's really where that contact would happen. But just wondered if there was some other means that we had in mind for allowing parents to communicate with the district.
So we have our normal ways of communication. They can always email through that tool that we have on the website. There's the feedback tool there. They can
Right.
always call the office. We are picking up voicemails and things like that. I don't know if creating yet another form would be just, if it's, you know, the one more thing to check when we already have structures in place for
Right.
parents to reach out. And versus looking at adding something different, we're sticking with what people are used to doing already. And those things seem to be working. We're able to get back to them. People are reaching out in the ways that they know how. And we're not looking to change that because we want some consistency.
Understood. Thank you very much for that.
Dr. Chatur, you have a second question?
Yes, I think it might be a good idea to at least have some sort of a survey again, because I know this for myself that when we filled out the survey, do we have technology? Yes, we do. But then you realize that the Kindle doesn't work with some of the apps that, like the Lexia or Dreambox, I forget which one, or an iPad, because you have an older version of the OS, it won't work. So there might be people who have said, yes, they have technology, but maybe some guidelines as to what your technology that you do have needs to be, what are the specs that you need for the classroom to actually work with the technology you do have. Because you might identify a few more people who think they have it.
We are planning, we still have the tool available, and as we're doing our outreach, then we will put that information in. We'll be able to capture that.
Thank you.
I wanted to ask one more follow-up question about the survey as well. The surveys were conducted by phone, which was tremendous. I really think it's amazing that we were able to reach out to touch in a very one-to-one way so many families. Did we do those with translation services for our families where the parents are not comfortable in English?
Of course we did. We sure did. Our E&L department was all over that. Not only did they receive the robocalls, but the E&L, Tom Giglio will probably report a little bit on that tonight. They contacted every one of our students with a personal phone call so that it could be translated in their language. So they have received that information. And tonight, from 3 to 6, we did have the distribution of Chromebooks for that population.
I figured it had been done, but I'm always good to ask. One other one I wanted to just follow up on. Did our phone call survey extend to our community-based pre-K students, or was it only for students housed in our buildings, or only for students who are kindergarten and up, or how was that handled?
I'm going to ask Mr. Baker to chime in on that one, please.
Actually, Mrs. Adams, I can speak to that.
Thank you, Dr. Wilson-Turner.
No problem. So our early childhood director absolutely connected with each director of our offsite programs and asked that either the director themselves, or if they still had staff available, make personal phone calls to each of those families, and they will continue to do so throughout this process, because for a lot of our families, that will be the primary means of which they can connect with them.
And are those included in those survey results when we see 75% or 80% of families have been, or students have been contacted? Are those students counted, or we're keeping track of that in a different way?
We're keeping track of that in a different way.
Okay. So those numbers that we're seeing are about, those are district kindergarten and up students that would be in those 75 or 80% numbers that we're seeing, right?
Yes.
Okay, any other questions on that operational component? Ms. Ritchie? Did I see your hand? Did everybody's screen just?
I'm trying to turn it off
Okay.
there. One
Okay.
question that just occurred to me is, would we have to provide Chromebooks to private school students locally?
No, we would not.
Okay, that was an interesting question. Shall we move on then and talk about the instructional components?
So as you know, we have a number of resources available, and we have done quite a bit of training. And so this portion of the presentation, I'm going to turn over to Mr. Baker to start with the training, and then Karen Bechtel will loop that into our curriculum and pacing guides. We'll also talk about our shared resources with the Capital Region and what we are emphasizing as being our materials moving forward in the Google Classroom platform. And then Dr. Wilson Turner and Laura McKenna will talk about the curriculum planning and logistics with teacher schedules, student schedules, and the expectations of our administrators. So at this time, Mr. Baker.
So while circumstances certainly provided impetus for us to kind of escalate our training goals and plan in regard to technology integration, we did have frameworks in place. And if the board recalls, when I addressed you earlier this year regarding the directions we were looking to head in as a division, one of the most important for us was the transition now into integration of technology. So our Google training program, even though it may have been shaped like a just-in-time model, it actually allowed us to leverage the framework we've already been building. And so we began working with our staff in mass with a foundational approach to start. So that focused on, for those teachers, skills in regard to the Google environment itself as a whole, the layout, the tools available, the setup and structures, the pieces, and foundational pieces you would need to consider to build your digital environment. We then provided a second session, which transitioned more into application of those skills toward the task that the district had assigned to folks relative to Google Space. So, there was a bit of a scaffolding and a sequence in place. And we were also able to kind of mobilize the power users that we've had. We do have a nice little ecosystem of current Google Classroom users. We're able to mobilize those folks. We also realized that this really is the intersection of instruction and technology that we've talked about. And so there's certainly a technical component. However, for us to be really successful in shifting our instructional design and our methods, it's going to be predicated on having that knowledge of pedagogy as well. So we also have begun to understand how to shift the roles of instructional coaches. So much like everyone in these times has been agile and flexible in our workload and our efforts, we also rolled into our training sessions those instructional coaches. So in each of these live sessions, we also had embedded moderators who were made up of those power users already, as well as the coaches that I mentioned. And so those folks were providing support directly as these training sessions went on. And as you know, we had to do everything remotely. So we offered live versions of each one of these trainings, as well as the recorded version for people to work with on their own as needed. We then kind of transitioned into the third day, a guided practice session. And these were very focused, individualized sessions where teachers could directly connect with a coach, one of the power users, to work on now setting up their spaces, their digital spaces for instructional purposes. And as we look to the next steps, we're going to then work with our staff in understanding how to make that classroom environment, the digital one, more dynamic. And that means integrating the true blended model approach, where you're talking about synchronous activities, asynchronous activities, and the fact that the teacher's role changes to more facilitator of that instructional design. And we're also looking to build now smaller professional communities of folks based on either content areas, grade levels, and we're embedding in those groups, those informal leaders being coaches who we brought along in this training process, as well as those power users. And I'm sure you all understand how much teachers like to share with one another. So that's great, and that's organic as it is. And this also fit well in what we've been building in the background in regard to allocating some Title IV funding that's been made available to us, in the sense that we're looking to add some stipended positions. Again, when I addressed the board earlier in the year, I said that the real goal for me was to get more coaches involved, instructional technology coaches. So we're looking at creating these stipended positions, and we already had the goal in mind this summer to intensive that allow people to really get a solid understanding of what it means to have a blended learning space. And again, the shift of teacher as facilitator, as opposed to that controller and the source of knowledge and controller of knowledge and sequencing. So we're very, I guess, excited about the fact that we've captured probably a much broader audience now, and expect that the work we're looking to do over the summer and in the subsequent school year will carry over. So that really is kind of the overview of how we've approached the training to this point, how we're looking at addressing it in the future.
Okay, thanks, Kent. And just to follow up with the Google training, the instructional supervisors and myself, curriculum and instruction, created a brief sort of instructionally minded survey to send out to staff to let us know about the immediate needs that folks had in order to get a lift to their Google Classroom. It was very specific by department, by grade level, so that we could do that very targeted reach out to staff as we engage in transitioning to a digital environment. So I wanted to speak a little bit about the curriculum. So this has been a very quick 2.5 weeks for curriculum and instruction. Our first phase, there's really 3 phases of the curriculum work. Our first phase began on March 10th at about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, when I brought a team together to talk about what we could get up on the website for online resources for K-8, ELA, and math. They wanted to add social studies and science at that time, so we did, and for courses ending in Regents. That was our first stage, and I'm really proud of my team because on Friday we had that ready to go. We knew that we needed to do more, so the phase 2 was really to expand and enhance those offerings on the website. We included in the next phase all content areas, expanded and had some finesse in some areas that were already posted, still with a focus on review and practice as we prepared for new learning in phase 3. Our phase 2, however, also included SPED resources, more social emotional resources, and we also restructured how it looked on the website so that it was at the grade level rather than by content, so that parents of students could more easily access where they needed to go for that their particular child. Phase 3 began immediately as phase 2 ended, because we knew that we had to transition into our new learning environment. And that will begin on Monday, April 6th. And it started also with the Google Classroom, so that we had our platform ready to go. We have had the coaches and the instructional supervisors establish Google Classrooms for professional learning. So there's no students in those classrooms, there are teachers in those classrooms. And that is where we will house our material, our weeks at a glance. One of the things that we're doing, particularly at elementary, but at secondary as well, is what does this week look like? What will the following week look like? And that will identify the essential question or the standard. It will identify the resources that the teacher can use, really trying to provide a lot of solid support for teachers as they engage in online learning. So that was our phase 3. I also wanted to mention that we've provided on the website information for parents on how to access the Google Classroom that might not yet be live. It may be live like right now or tomorrow, but we have resources to help people from that end. We've had a very nice partnership with Capital Region BOCES in this process. Cecily and Lori and I have been at the assistant superintendent meetings every morning from 8 till 9. The goal of those meetings was really about how can Capital Region BOCES support the 24 districts in sort of systematizing how the online learning is going so that it's equal and consistent across the districts in our area. So that was really a great partnership. I worked on a subcommittee on scheduling and how that would look. And then alongside my committee was another committee that was working on a guidance document for online learning. What came out of that was early information about time on instruction, time on new learning for children. And that was established to be 2.5 hours a week for K2 students, which turns out to be 15 minutes for ELA and 15 minutes for math daily, plus another hour of instruction. And it seems like a small amount, but it does not include the practice or any of the application that a student might have. And the reality is, with the smallest of our students, that 15-minute mini lesson to get them going with a new concept is enough time to do one thing. And so that was where, that is the guidance that came out from BOCES. For grades 3 through 5, it is 4 hours a week of ELA and math, which is 30 minutes a day, and then an hour in additional courses. One of the reasons for that is really about not overwhelming parents at home who may not be educators. We want them to be able to manage having kids all day long, being able to tackle that task and do that work. So that was a lot of the guidance. We had some very early anecdotal reports about parents feeling very overwhelmed by what was being asked of them by different school districts. And our school district did not want to fall into that. So that nice BOCES guidance, BOCES partnership led us to develop our teacher schedules, which at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Lori and Cecily, who will talk about the teacher and student schedules.
Okay, I'm going to begin, but I think we have to go back one more. So we worked alongside Karen as she developed the curriculum, and as she mentioned, our collaborative work with BOCES to develop an interpretation of what this would look like for the City School District of Albany through our teacher and student schedules. We provided guidance documents yesterday that provided the clarification for our families and for our teaching staff as to how the day would look for each party. As Karen mentioned, we attempted to make it a schedule that would work for our families well. And so we're very intentional in how we scheduled the time in the day for teachers to be available live for families in the moment, providing the new instruction required as determined by in collaboration with the BOCES. And so in the elementary schedule, parents will be able to see a clear hour block where they can go into the Google Classroom and be able to access and interface with their classroom teacher in a variety of ways, as Karen has described, ways that allow parents to work alongside their student as they work with their teacher on the assignments that have been provided, and assignments that are in alignment with the guidance provided by our instructional supervisors for ELA, social studies, math, and science. Also, what we made available for families is the ability to engage with the Encore teacher inside the core teacher's Google Classroom space. So parents can go to one Google Classroom and be able to see all of the core and Encore teachers in that same space, as well as their special education teacher and their reading teacher, who typically pushes into the classrooms at the primary age ranges. We tried to make that as organized and accessible as possible so that students can go in at any time, as Mr. Baker alluded to see things that are live, or as my new vocabulary word is asynchronistic, where families can tune in at a different time if that is a time slot that works better for them. We have built it so that no hour of time conflicts with another, except for sixth grade, which we had to honor the schedule that is existing at the middle school so that the sixth grade experience is similar across the 2 grade levels. So this will allow families to plan for when their child would need to access the classroom and allow them to access the classroom at a different time if that time frame did not work for them. Our teachers will, and for the encores, they have 2 opportunities throughout the day to engage in art, library, music, and physical education. And again, they can do that with access to the teachers during that time frame, or they can just go into that Google Classroom space and select the activity that they're assigned to do, and then seek out the teacher at a later time for feedback or guidance if they were unclear on a particular activity. And we're designing activities to be done in a way that is easy to navigate at home, but still meets the learning standards that we would be working on. Our teachers, in addition to providing this instruction during this time in the Google Classroom, their schedule also includes time for common planning time and professional development, so they can continue to develop their skills in the instruction during this time in the Google Classroom. Their schedule also includes time for common planning time and professional development, so they can continue to develop their skills in delivering quality instruction in this new environment, but in general as well. And so it provides us a unique opportunity for them to work collaboratively to continue to design the quality instruction that we need to see. And then they are available throughout the day for parents who may have questions, need to send emails, and also to continue our regular work of the school. And that is our student support team and multi-tiered systems of support meetings, our building leadership team meetings, so they can continue to plan to move forward the school. So on balance, we're able to provide an instructional time that incorporates the 2.5 hours requirement for K2 and the 4 hours requirement, which ends up being 5 when you add encores, 4, 3, 5. In a way that we feel like is balanced for the teachers, but allows parents the flexibility to select their time frame and also whatever activities that they want to do outside of that time frame to continue the learning for their student.
So I'll interject.
So I'll jump in now and just go over the middle level.
Right now, you were looking at the teacher schedule right now, and this is for grades 6 through 8. And I know we have them attached in the board meeting in board docs. You can see the different teacher schedules, and then we'll go back so that you can see the student schedules. So Ms. McKenna, I think are you up now?
I am on. So this is the teacher schedule for grades 6 through 8. And what you see here is a block of time for our encore classes and a block of time for our core classes. The difference between elementary and middle school is that we are required to provide 2 hours per week for each core class. And core classes are defined at the middle level as English, math, science, social studies, and world language. In addition, we're required to provide 1 hour per week for each encore class, and those are defined as art, music, PE, technology, health, computer, and facts. In addition to our teachers providing core and encore instruction, we also have our related services providers at all 3 levels providing supports and services for our students with IEPs and 504s, which include speech, psychological counseling, occupational therapy, PT, OT, music therapy, and then of course for our English language learners support per the Part 154 regulations. And I'll talk a little bit about that later on in the presentation. If you could, perfect. For our students, this is what a student schedule would look like. They would receive, again, 2 hours of instruction with their core teachers, in addition to a 1 hour office hour for teachers to provide support and guidance based on the new instruction that was provided in those 1-2 hour blocks of time. In addition to the office hours and the instructional blocks that teachers have in their schedule, we've also provided an independent work hour for students to support the work that was given to them on the online learning platform. Just like the elementary teachers, we are also we've also built into a teacher schedule common planning team with the instructional supervisors once a week, and also building level teamwork to focus on data teaming, behavioral strategies for students and professional development, as well as a faculty meeting to bring the entire faculty together to just touch base once a week and to hear from the building leaders on what supports students need and how faculty can support their efforts in totality. So that's it for middle school. For high school, again, it's pretty similar. The difference here with high school is that the requirement is 3 hours per week for core classes. And again, same definition, English, math, science, social studies, and world language. And then 2 hours per week for encore classes. So in the staff schedule here, you'll see the one difference is that we have 2 90-minute blocks of time for those core classes for students and teachers to engage in. For encores, they have 1 hour blocks of time. And you'll see here again, once a week, our teachers are engaging in common planning teams with their instructional supervisor, and they also have a period built in to meet as a faculty. We're not expecting all faculty at Albany High School to meet at one time. We are using the academy principals and the assistant principals, as well as the principal and vice principal, to break up into smaller groups to provide direction and guidance and support for the faculty once a week as well. Teachers also have office hours built in. Here's a sample of a student schedule, and you'll see that we really tried to coordinate so they didn't have more than 2 core classes on any given day. So we really tried to balance the workload for our students during this online learning time. And I think that's it as far as the student and staff schedules at the secondary level. So I guess I'm still on. I think the next part of the presentation is special ed, PPS, and ENL, and the supports that we're putting in place. But before I begin giving you an update on those 3 areas, I would like to publicly thank our directors of PPS, Dr. Canzoni Ball, Special Education, Ms. Greisler, and ENL and Refugee Services, Mr. Giglio, and their teams for their endless work and leadership on navigating through the federal and state guidance we are receiving on an almost daily basis, and ensuring that our students and families are receiving continuity of program and services as outlined in a student's IEP or as defined by the Part 154 regulations for ENL instruction. So a lot has been going on. I'll take it one piece at a time. For special education and PPS, and I'll start with the IEP, 504s, and CSE meetings. So we are continuing to hold annual review meetings over the phone or via Google Meet. Our 504 meetings are also being scheduled for May and June by building, and if we continue with our school closure, we will hold those meetings virtually as well. Parents have been contacted regarding initial referrals, and agreements have been documented to put them on hold during the closure. Reevaluations that are not complete will be completed upon staff return to school, so we're not behind. Related service providers are establishing Google Classrooms and schedules in order to support the delivery of services in alignment with the students' IEPs and 504s. And they are coordinating around the student schedules that I just shared with you and Cecily shared with you at the elementary level to ensure that there's no conflict with core instruction. In addition, special education teachers are working on establishing Google Classrooms and Hangouts schedules for the purposes of providing specially designed instruction targeted to address the students' IEPs. We also have our teaching assistants assigned to specific programs which they will be utilized to support the needs of students virtually, both individually and in small groups. We're in the process of developing a plan to mail parent surveys home to parents as required by the New York State Education Department for the reporting of one of our indicators, Indicator 8, addressing parent involvement. So we're in the process of doing that. In addition, daily meetings are being held by our special ed administrators, and we're also conducting weekly department meetings for clerks and chairpersons to ensure that they are actively engaged in continuity of program and services for our students with disabilities. We're also providing online support for students and families where special ed and PPS staff are working with general education colleagues to build their Google Classrooms. Social workers and behavior specialists are compiling a variety of social emotional learning, which Karen Beckwell mentioned a little bit ago. And our K-8 social emotional learning curriculum publisher, Second Step, has opened up all online resources for teachers and families. So we're excited about that. And those have been posted online as well. Our student support services is collaborating to develop online parent resources divided into buckets or topics. And additionally, if the school closure is extended, we are exploring the possibility of staffing a family information line. And we're working with Kent Baker and his team to look at the possibilities for that. And that will be to answer questions or concerns that can either be called in, emailed, or texted, and would be responded by someone from the PPS department. The student support team members are also actively reaching out to our families on their caseload and providing on-loan and telephonic check-ins and supports over the phone, in addition to the mandated services. So there's a lot going on in addition to the instruction. We also continue to receive federal and state guidance outlining the responsibility of each district to make every effort to provide special education and related services in accordance with each student's IEP or Section 504 plan. The students support services personnel, social workers, psychologists, behavior specialists, speech therapists are in the process of setting up related services schedules for teletherapy. We're also focusing on making sure that Ed Law 2D and our HIPAA compliance are in place as we look at student medical records. Nurses are maintaining those records as well. Related services delivered via teletherapy have been approved by the Department of Health, Department of Education, and the New York State Education Department at this time, so that's great. FERPA regulations have been relaxed due to the extenuating circumstances, and staff, as they are reaching out to families, are obtaining and documenting verbal consent from families in order to commence teletherapy. So that documentation is critical. And then last but not least, English language learners, in an effort to ensure Part 154 compliance to the extent practicable and continuity of instruction for our English language learners. We are, to meet the requirement, and I believe Superintendent Adams mentioned this earlier, we are, our E&L department staff have been making phone calls using the language line solutions and our bilingual staff, and that's really proven to be most effective with our families. District administrators have been participating in weekly leadership conferences with conference calls with the New York State Education Department to ensure that they're staying up to date with any changes in the provisions of E&L instruction during the COVID-19 school closure. We're also ensuring that our ELs have access to technology with leadership support from Kent Baker and his team, as well as Tom Giglio. And Superintendent Adams mentioned that over the course of the last 2 days, we've set up from 3 to 6 time for our L families to come over to the high school to pick up those devices. We've also been working in collaboration with Karen Bechtel, where a repository of resources for our ENL teachers have been posted online, and also working with the Office of Bilingual Education Department, Arburn, to get those resources as well. And they continue to support us and our teachers in the development of online instruction through webinars, virtual supports of resources, and specialists, et cetera. I also want to mention that through our partnership with CUNY, we have access to resources to support online instruction for our SIFE students in the Bridges curriculum at AIC. And our ENL teachers have been linked also to our co-teachers and core content courses, and will continue to support our Ls for the Part 154 regulations. And so I could go on, and I'm sure Mr. Giglio will mention some of this information in his update to you as well. But that's really the status update during the COVID-19 school closure from the student supports departments.
So next we are looking at what our next steps are, and you'll see that some of these are ongoing, and these are the things that we are working on together. We're looking at, with our maintenance and operations department, continuing to clean and sanitize our buildings. Our food service program, again, we're looking at how we can survey to make sure that we're meeting the needs of our families. We did include several days ago information about medication pickup to make sure that the families that may be in need of medication that they left at the building, they just need to make sure that they contact us so that we can make sure that they can get those medications. Our distance learning training will be ongoing because we are supporting our teachers, but also our students and support staff members. So we're looking at professional development there as well. We're continuing with our Chromebook distribution, and we'll refine that as we go, and looking at opportunities and different plans to help make sure that our students have internet access. And then we will start thinking about what our summer school structure might be and how does that look in lieu of the time of where we are, and depending on what our executive orders are in terms of being in school, then we will be able to come forward with some suggestions about where we are when it comes to summer school. So at this time, we will open it up for questions with regard to the academic side of the house, in looking at how we are delivering quality instruction in a robust learning environment so that we can have equity among all of our students.
Thank you very much. That was a very extensive report, and a lot of this information is new to us. I think we're all still trying to visualize how this is going to be. So board colleagues, I know we're going to have a lot of questions. I'm going to ask you to please be respectful of each other and ask only one question so that we can each get a question, and then we will certainly go around. Dr. Chittor, I see you have your hand up. Would you like to go first?
Yes, thank you. Once again, kudos to the whole team for putting all this together in such a short time. It's amazing what you guys have done. My question was going to be in terms of, this goes back to the distribution of the Chromebooks and access to the classroom, right? So let's say you have schedules for elementary, middle, and high school students. But let's say there's a family with an elementary student and a high school student, or a high school student and a middle school student. If you just look at 9 to 10 on any given day, there's multiple things happening. So how do you allow for that scheduling conflict between divisions or levels of education? What can the students do?
One of the guidance pieces that we've provided to staff was that any active lesson that they're doing needs to be able to be replicated in the Google Classroom environment, so that while I might be live and available on the Google chat for the period of the lesson that I'm supposed to be on, my lesson needs to be able to be transferable to any time in the day when a student might come on. So that is the guidance and the advice and the recommendation and the mandate that we've given everybody, is that the lessons are able to be accessed at any point. So to your point, someone could access it at 5 o'clock or 8 o'clock or something like that.
So it's a recorded, the recording is accessible any other time. Thank you. That explains it.
That's the design.
I just want to ask a follow-up on that because I think everyone is really struggling with this. It's so new and trying to visualize what this really means. Those student schedules are, if I'm understanding correctly, are times that you will be able to count on your teacher being present online for synchronous communication, but not necessarily the time that you must do that work. Is that a right way of thinking about it?
That is correct. That is correct. It would probably, it's all new territory, as you just pointed out. It seems likely that it might be slightly more beneficial to be there when the teacher can answer your question in the moment. However, the teacher will have office hours at other times when you can come in and ask questions at that point at the secondary level. So that way that if you're not there for the actual live, I'm here and present in this moment, you have another opportunity during the office hour period. And you also have opportunities to just email your teacher and ask questions if you are getting into the course at 6 o'clock that evening for whatever reason.
Board colleagues, does anyone have other questions on this very specific but important topic of just sort of the way this schedule is going to work, what the logistics are from a family's perspective? Who's got a question on that?
Sort of, yes. Okay.
I'm sorry, everybody. How about Ms. Krejci and then Mr. Emiliawi?
My question was just, thank you so much for putting this together. You know, it reminds me of the metaphor a few years ago. I think we were talking about Common Core, where they described it as putting an airplane together in the sky. And boy, this is really putting an airplane together while I'm amazed at what, you know, you guys have reinvented the secondary education in a week. And it's amazing. I'm really thrilled with so much about it. My question was with the middle school schedule and the encores, because obviously middle school students who are in the building don't have all the encore subjects at one time. So are students that don't currently, for example, have FACS and technology going to join a FACS and technology in our classroom right now?
No, they will only follow their schedule that they have. So if I am a 7th grader and I'm not in an art class, I won't begin until ELA at 9 o'clock. If you know, and so on and so forth.
Thank you so much.
And again, the concept is this is a time your teacher will be available. That yes. It's not really a student schedule so much as it's a teacher availability schedule.
It's when the new learning will take place in a sense. So, you know, again, I think it's almost helpful to envision yourself as a 7th grade student. So on Monday morning, I don't take art. So I'm in ELA at 9. And then from last week, I had some world language things that I have some questions about. So I'm going to jump into the world language office hour and ask my teacher a question about what was linked last week. And then I'm going to go have some lunch. And then I'm going to go into social studies where there'll be some type of a mini lesson and probably some work for later on. And then I don't take health or FACS, so I'm not going to worry about that office hour, but I am going to work on my social studies now from, you know, and finish that up so that I'm ready for the next period of time. It'll be dependent upon the individual student schedule, but you'll note that there's 2 ELAs, 2 maths, 2 science, 2 social studies, and then an hour of office hours for each of those teachers. So It is a student schedule in the sense that they know when their teacher will be available in, have a presence, a live presence in the Google Classroom. But you're right, it is also in a sense a teacher schedule because it defines when they too are in the classroom and actively engaging with students.
Mr. El-Manawi?
Thank you. I am amazed at the work that you guys do. It is really amazing that you put this together in such a short time. My question is regarding basically teachers will know what students were able to access what lessons, right?
Yes, we have instituted a I guess, a protocol where a student or the teacher will begin the lesson. So if I'm ELA at 9 o'clock on Monday morning, I will say, good morning, students. Let's get going with our lesson. First task, please write down the essential question in the chat box. And so the 7th grade students all write their they write it down in the chat box and hit send, and now it's memorialized in that chat box feature. So now I know who has logged on.
Okay, so everyone needs to respond in order to be counted. I
think everyone needs to respond to that initial question. And then later on, of course, if they're in a discussion or there's some other thing, of course, perhaps every student won't respond in that moment. But the very first question will be an effort to understand who is in the Google Classroom at that moment.
Do the Google Classroom...
Interject just for a moment, if I can. That question is either, it's just like when so now think about when a student goes into the class, then there's the I can statement on the board, or the objective is on the board, and there's some type of essential question that may be on the board. So taking from that concept of if you were in the classroom, it's the same thing. You're present in the Google environment, the Google Classroom, and the teacher starts the class, and it's what is the objective today, or what is your I can statement today, so that there's that initial engagement starting to happen.
Thank you.
I think it's Ms. Mann's question.
Okay.
Hi, can you guys hear me?
Cameras?
Yes.
Great. So this is phenomenal. And I know that we have some students that perhaps may not be as tech savvy and may have some difficulty, right, navigating this. And so what are some thoughts about that?
One of the things that we did, we have two thoughts. So we have some written guidance that I think I mentioned in the presentation. If it's not already posted, it will be posted by tomorrow. Jake and I discussed it this afternoon, sort of a cheat sheet for students to get access to the Google Classroom. Brings you right through step by step. Another recommendation that we have had and I'd like to enact is to perhaps have one of our student help desk students participate in creating a video from a student perspective of how I get onto the Google Classroom and how I'm going to interact with it. It's not just getting in, it's how do I interact with it? How do I use the chat box? How do I find my my work? Where are my activities? What are the codes at the top of the page that I need to access so that I know where I'm going and navigate through? So that's a next step.
Okay, I think, I'm sorry. I think that the next question was, I now forgotten we had a order Tabitha.
Okay.
I think Ms. Wilson had a question.
Yes, so it's amazing that we have such psychic unity, because one of my suggestions / questions was going to be whether we had demos in mind. I didn't think of the students doing the demos, but I think that's even a better idea than what I was thinking of, which was the parents, because I know people tend to listen or learn from their peers more often, regardless of what we say. But my other question, which was kind of somewhat answered by the office hours also, was about differentiated instruction, knowing that this may be too challenging for some or not challenging enough for others. So I imagine that could be hashed out at those times that you built in.
That is how, that's the model. That's the design.
So I have a much better understanding myself of how this is going to work. Anybody else have additional questions, board colleagues, on this concept, how these things are structured, the structural way the day is going to work? If not, if anybody has, oh, Ms. Smith, did you have a question? You haven't asked a question yet.
Actually, again, I just wanted to say what I said in the very beginning about how moved I was. I think that as I read through the materials, I could sort of visualize a bit more of what you were doing, and it's just more enlightening to hear the explanation and so forth. So again, I just kudos, and I'm very excited to see how this continues to evolve, and of course it makes me also think about how much more ready we will all be going forward. If one can think about silver linings, this would be one where the technology is now going to be used in much more advanced ways. And so I think there's several good things. I like the kind of contact that you all have described, the touch points that we'll have with our youngsters, our students, and the flexibility on the schedules. I was thinking myself of, I have my college daughter who's home, and she has all kinds of things going. She's got some things that are already recorded. She's got live classes. A lot is going on. And so I kind of had a sense of what might happen here, but it is absolutely phenomenal. And I'm just kudos to all of the kinds of things that you all have thought about and are building in. And I can also see how it will perhaps evolve as we learn more, as we know more, and have a sense of the experiences, both from teachers and students and so forth. So let me stop talking and say just thank you all.
And I do want to say thank you to the cabinet team. Is an amazing team, and we work so well together and have worked so well in this instructional model right alongside Mr. Baker. And then the people who report to us, all the instructional supervisors that develop the undergirding of this. And it has been an amazing effort. And as you said, also there's a silver lining in that we're propelling ourselves right into the online environment, no matter how the rest of the year goes.
So board colleagues, any other questions on instructional matters beyond sort of the way this is structured? I know one question that I'm wondering about is where and at what point we'll be ready to talk about grading policy for fourth quarter. I know you've released some information about grading policy for third quarter, but I know it's certainly on people's minds. What is this going to look like for fourth quarter? Has any sense of what that decision-making process is going to look like, or when we might know something about that?
We are still waiting for guidance from the state education department and Capital Region BOCES. We are working with them daily. And as that guidance comes down, that will help inform how we will do this work. But the message that we want to send home to kids is this is the work, this is the content, this is the academic life that you're in right now as a K through 12 student. And we actually sort of feel a little bit that there's some freedom with this that perhaps may engage the students in a very different way. So we are right now looking for academics for academic sake, and then as the information comes down from state ed, we will release that guidance and information about fourth quarter.
Anyone else have another question on an instructional topic? Mr. El-Menyawi, I see you're not muted. Did you have a question?
Yeah, it's more of a technical question. So this is just one Google Classroom that the students are going to be logging into. It's not like they're going to have to log into multiple.
So for the elementary children, we have set it up so it is one classroom. And if the music teacher can connect, the special education teacher can connect to that classroom teacher's Google Classroom, the art teacher will connect. And that way, for a parent and a elementary student, they will go to one space. Our only exception at elementary will be for students, instrumental students. That will be a separate, they are a subset of students. And so that will be a separate Google Classroom where they will go for that instruction. But at the secondary level, that we can't do that. Each student at the secondary level has 8 teachers. So they will have to log in to however many courses they're taking, that is the number of Google Classrooms. I will say that special education teachers will push in, ENL teachers will push in, reading support teachers will push in, math support teachers will push into the Google Classroom that their students are connected to. But by and large, it will be your 4 cores, your world language, and any of the elective classes that you are in.
That actually brings up a question that's been on my mind that I hadn't really been fully crystallized, but that was helpful for me to crystallize it. Your average ELA teacher, let's say at the secondary level in middle school, teaches 4 sections of ELA, right? So they'll be on from 9 to 10 on Mondays, but they would have 4 sections of students. That'd be roughly 80, 85 students or 90 students. How is that going to work? They'll all be in the same classroom? I don't understand.
It's a very good question, Ms. Savage. That is still the design, that you would have all of those students connected to the class. We will have to see next week how that goes, how our numbers go. Of course, we're hoping that 80 kids will be in the Google Classroom, but we are thinking that there will be kids that will come in later to connect to the resources that the teacher is posting. And remember that unless the teacher chooses to use a platform such as this, it's the connection will be through the chat box. It'll be through the message board for the work that's happening in that moment. We would like teachers to move into either, we've given several options. They can tape themselves, videotape themselves, even using Google Meet. You can have Google Meet with you and yourself alone so that you could have a big screen, so to speak, and tape yourself giving a lesson in art or in ELA or whatever it might be. And then you can link that video of yourself giving that lesson to the Google Classroom. That is an option as well. The way that Vicki described her daughter being on, I'm sure her daughter was on with multiple other students, and in this kind of environment, we're taking steps to get there. We feel that there are some teachers, particularly at the high school, who would have facility to do that. But we are also offering the teachers a variety of methods to engage and connect with students as we enter into the online environment.
Other questions, board colleagues?
Just
Ms. Smith.
Yes, and I know that this is going to probably come up, or if it hasn't already, it will come up more, and it's about the seniors. I have had some students in other schools that I work with who are quite anxious about now, and I know part of that is about the Regents exams, which hopefully we'll hear something about from the Regents next week at their meeting. But there are other things that they're also concerned about, online, applications, SAT things, and I'm sure you all are working on that front as well. There's just a lot of unknown, but I wondered if right now that you're getting any messages, from your students or families about, a little further out about what they need to do now.
At this time, we don't have a lot of guidance with regard to that. Those things have not come out because, as you know, much of those things, we have to abide by what state ed says. And so once some of those decisions are made, then we can then follow through with what we need to do. And also it's a bigger picture. Not only are the students concerned about SATs and ACTs, that those testing opportunities have been canceled. Now we have to backwards map that from universities who are very much aligned with using that data to make decisions about students coming to their universities. So they have to also work with what are their guidelines going to be. And so we haven't heard anything from higher ed either with regard to what are they going to do in terms of accepting students, what's going to be their criteria. If students have gone through their instruction and now it's the last quarter of their senior year and it's a pass-fail environment, what is that GPA? Are they still using that GPA? Those are unknowns. And so we can't even begin to guess with our students. And that's why we have remained silent, because we don't have the guidance. And versus put out misinformation, we want to wait until we have the correct information so that when we move forward with it, we have the accurate information with our students.
No, I really do appreciate that. Thank you. And it's very hard, as you can imagine, while you're in it and we're all waiting, to be patient. And so I do have to remind myself of that as well. And also parents that I speak with, that it's all happening and, it'll all evolve and it all will work out, but we do have to exercise some patience. But I do know that those questions are out there. And so I simply wanted to put them on the table.
I think one of the most important things that we try to include in our documents, but also what we want to communicate to our families, is that many of the questions that they're asking are not decisions that are made at a local level. And so now people are now getting a glimpse into how regulated we are and how many of those decisions, they don't just reside at a local level. While the details might be how we carry it out at a local level, that bigger picture of the guidelines and, for example, an executive order. The executive order comes out with the overview of this is what you are supposed to do. That's our direction. Now we have to plan the details out about what that is in order to make that executive order happen. And I think the most important thing is to help our community understand that many of those questions that they're asking are questions that are going to be answered at a higher level. And then we will determine the details of how to make that happen.
Appreciate that.
Mr. Elmiawi, you had another question?
Yes, thank you. I wanted to kind of get a better idea of how the classroom works just from student perspective. So do students see other students' comments, and do they see other students in the video? And I mean, I guess the overarching question is, how are we making sure that they're conducting themselves as good digital citizens?
We have protocols that we are putting forward, just like there are protocols that you use for meetings. If you remember when we first started, there was a handout that was sent out with regard to here are things that you need to be mindful of in an adult meeting environment, just even in a meeting like this. There are protocols that you follow in conducting business meetings in a virtual environment. Then there are protocols that teachers would need to follow as well in a virtual environment. And then they would have to do that direct instruction with their students.
Oh, we lost you.
Yeah.
It's just like when you have students in a classroom, on the very first day, you establish your norms. And these are the protocols that we have in a classroom. And so those things will be done along with the teacher and the students to establish that online protocol.
Thank
I
you.
just have one last question, which is tied into this question of good digital citizenship. I know we've had a couple of conversations about passwords and student usernames, and I wonder where we were on that in order to ensure that students can't log in as each other too easily. And also a secondary question, I know that some parents have raised some questions about whether the Chromebooks allow for sufficient parental controls to ensure that there isn't open access to the internet. So those are two related questions.
So I'll turn that over to Mr. Baker.
So in regard to the first question and student passwords, we did move to make that change regarding passwords in grades 6 through 12. So students in those grades wholly own and control those passwords. We were literally on the precipice of changing the model for K-5 right as this kind of came over us. And so in that moment, it seemed to be extraordinarily counterproductive and somewhat irresponsible to make the student password changes literally as we were going to be connecting with our students remotely. And when I say literally, we had that work in place. We had just talked to the admins about it. We had all the documents prepared, and we were just about to make the change in regard to K-5. So unfortunately, there's a bit of a vulnerability when it comes to K-5 students. However, it does require that someone know two fairly specific pieces of information about that student to be able to assume an identity. But it is recognized as a vulnerability that we are working to address now, and will as soon as it is practical again for us. And in regard to the second part of the question was about, I think, the overall Google Classroom space and the Chromebook use. So any of the Chromebooks that go home that are district issued retain their filtering. That is one of the reasons why we are pushing Chromebooks out and not any other device. But we want to maintain the ability to do a lot of things in terms of management, and those Chromebooks are ideal for that. So, we're confident in the fact that when a student's on a device at home, it's like they're sitting in one of our buildings, and all that network traffic, the internet visits are going through the filter, and also monitored as needed if in the event we would have to investigate something that could be deemed inappropriate.
Okay, thank you very much. Board colleagues, I think that we're set. Does anybody have a final question? I know that we took more time than we had originally planned, but as this is such a critical understanding of how teaching and learning is going to happen in our school district, I think it's worth the additional time. Anybody another question? Okay, thank you very much for all your tremendous work as we've turned to this district into a distance learning district in just a couple of weeks. It's pretty astonishing the level of effort you all have put in, and we really appreciate all the work you've done. And we're going to transition now to our discussion of the instructional division, the pre-COVID instructional division, I believe is what we'll call this.
So at this time, Dr. Cecily Wilson-Turner and Ms. Lori McKenna will come forward so that they can discuss the instructional division update.
Great. I will start us off, and I just want to say good evening. And Dr. Wilson-Turner and I will provide you with an update on the elementary and secondary instructional divisions and the system structures and routines we have established to build and support the leadership capacity of our district and our building leaders. And as you can see on slide number 3, we will talk to you about what those systems look like and what we have been doing to support the work of our teachers in the building. So I'll start out with I guess a fundamental belief that we are in service to our schools and building and district leaders, and to support our building and district leaders and to support their capacity and increase their capacity as leaders, we have established regular check-ins with all of our building and district leaders. And as you can see from the slide, the next slide, depending on the level of support our building leaders needs, really determines the length and the frequency of our principal check-ins. However, the general rule is between 1 to 2 hours per month for tenured principals and about 2 hours every 2 weeks for our probationary principals. But again, that can fluctuate depending on the need of the principal and the schools. Agendas for these check-in meetings are collaboratively developed between the building or district leaders and the assistant superintendent. So it's not one way, it's jointly developed. And this really gives us the opportunity to create that learning environment between the assistant superintendent and the leader. There are standing agenda items that are included in every agenda. And as you can imagine, and you'll see in the next few slides, it includes our instructional walkthroughs. And what we try to do is begin each of our check-in meetings with at least one instructional walkthrough with the leader. And it gives us an opportunity to engage in a dialogue with the principal around the instructional practices that are happening in the classroom. We also review walkthrough trends, which also gives us another opportunity to discuss trends across the building and areas of growth or focus for the school for professional development. Also through the principal evaluation process, each school leader develops 2 to 3 goals for the year, and the check-ins gives us an opportunity to discuss progress toward those goals and to determine if mid-course corrections are needed to identify barriers or challenges that may be impacting progress towards meeting those goals. We also discuss at these check-in meetings progress toward the STEP goals and the implementation of the initiatives that have been outlined in their steps. We often look at real-time data in the data dashboards to determine successes or barriers towards their goals and the initiatives. In addition, we monitor the leader's progress towards completion of teacher and assistant principal observations on a regular basis. Shana Barber, under Cecily's leadership, provides us on a regular basis updates on, from a district perspective, on where our leaders are in that process, so we can support that work as well. And this just ensures that we are meeting contractual timeline requirements as outlined in the APPR process. And lastly, we provide an opportunity to our leaders to identify items that they need to be addressed, as well as items that that we need to focus on. And what we find is that a lot of the items that are addressed in the leader identified items are really around management and operational, because in the former agenda items that I just discussed, we address a lot of the teaching and learning and professional growth as we're going through and reviewing that data. We also hold monthly assistant principal and director check-ins. The monthly assistant principal meetings are new this year, and it has really been a nice addition to our check-in meetings, and we try to align those assistant principal check-in meetings with our principal check-in meetings, so we can follow up with the principals as well. And it has really provided us an opportunity to get to learn the strengths of our assistant principals and where they see themselves next year and 3 years and 5 years in the organization, and also have those professional dialogues around instructional walkthroughs, common planning teams, et cetera. And then also I guess we can go to the next slide, which talks about, and Cecily will speak more about this, but she also holds the monthly elementary vertical core meetings, which are similar to one of my district meetings at the, we call it the DABBLE meeting, district and building leaders, and they're very similar, where we, Cecily meets with the instructional supervisors, special education, early childhood, people personnel, and the MTSS, multi-tiered systems of support folks, to really talk about and identify needs at the elementary level. And I don't know, Cec, if you want to jump in and add anything to that, or when I'm done with this slide, you can jump in and go back to that. I also hold weekly student support services check-in meetings, and Cecily joins us for those meetings as well, because we're really focusing on K-12, because I have the director for PPS, special ed, and ENL. We meet twice a week. I'm sorry, for 2 hours each week, and we look at special ed, social emotional learning, safety and security, quality assurance with Megan Warren. We look at our DCEP goals to make sure that we are following what we said we would be doing in our district's comprehensive improvement plan. It's data driven. We look at the data using our data dashboards to determine if we need to do mid-course corrections with our student support services staff at the building level, Medicaid compliance, grant implementation, et cetera. And very similar to how we are, how we have developed our principal check-in meetings. These agendas are also jointly developed between our leaders and the assistant superintendents. And that time has really proven to be helpful in coordinating our efforts K through 12. Karen and I lead what we call a DABLE meeting each month, and it stands for District and Building Leaders. And this is focused on the high school administrators with the instructional supervisors. We meet for 2 hours a month, and we have representation from our special education, people personnel, and ENL departments to look at all of the, to really focus on the high school and what the needs are, looking at instructional walkthrough trends, common planning teams, and what those trends are. And I'll talk a little bit about those later on in the presentation. But all of these meetings that I've just talked about has really helped to provide support to our district and building leaders and really grow them as instructional leaders in our district. And I'll turn it over to Cecily.
Good evening. So one of our big areas of focus has been this year, and probably every year since Lori and I have been in these roles, is to build the capacity of our principals to lead instructionally. And a core focus of that is through developing their capacity to do data analysis with the multiple data sources that they have available to them, not only to inform their instructional decisions, but all the decisions that help them to lead the building. As a result of that, in our monthly principals meetings, Lori and I split off into elementary and secondary. Sometimes we stay together if it's a topic that's relevant for both, to dive deeply into some of the topics I'm going to go through now. So data dashboards, every time we get on the floor to talk about instruction, we sing the praises of the data dashboard that have come out of the Office of Assessment and Technology. They are instrumental to the work that we do every single day from the top of our organization all the way through. And so as we switched over to the Power BI dashboards, we have spent a lot of time teaching our principals both in our check-in sessions one-to-one, but also in our whole group professional development sessions about how to utilize those dashboards to drill down to the exact piece of data that they need. Tricia, Kent, and their team have been invaluable in providing one-on-one support beyond what Lori and I could provide to them, to help teachers, principals really to dive into that, and even to help their assistant principals, homeschool coordinator, when there are relevant data pieces for them to inform their learning. We did a NWA training in August for all administrators that are impacted instructionally, including our assistant principals, instructional supervisors, directors, so that we could revisit our knowledge around the NWA data that we hang so much of our academic progress on. And what we have come to learn is that we had a lot of work to do to develop the capacity, more so of our teachers in this area. And so by developing our principals' understanding of all the resources and tools that exist within NWA and how it can be leveraged, not just to measure student growth, but to more effectively plan for instruction, principals were then able to turn around and deliver that level of professional development, instruction, and support around NWA to their staff, further building their capacity, and us being able to see that bear out in our student growth results in this winter. We've brought NWA back again in November for our principals meeting to dive deeper into that work, to be able to continue that effort. It's been wonderful to watch our principals then take it and lead it with their staff. We always do our New York State 3 through 8 assessment analysis in the early summer and late summer and early fall to kind of set the tone and focus for the school year in terms of what we need to see improvement in. And then this year we had to take time to introduce the Easy CBM program, which replaced our Ames web software for our diagnostic and progress monitoring tool for our students. And we were able to do that in early October. It was our intent to revisit that with our current data in March, but our March principals meeting didn't allow for us to get to that in light of our current situation. And then the latest introduction has been eDoctrina, and we're still really working through that at the elementary level, but the secondary level has been doing that work and kind of leading the way, which has been helpful for us. We have also invested a tremendous amount since we've come into this role into data teaming and the common planning time. And it looks differently at elementary than secondary because of the frequency in which it occurs. However, both levels have done a lot of work to establish protocols and documents as to how these meetings run, how data is used, how student work is reviewed, and how goals are set and reached through this process. At the elementary level specifically, I'll speak to because Lori's going to go into a little more detail because it's been a significant focus for the middle school level. But at the elementary level, we have established our practice of our instructional coaches providing ongoing support to teacher teams at each grade level to be able to look at the data and make immediate instructional decisions that impact children that coming week, and to be able to see, drill down into the data, how their instruction is impacting student outcomes. So each month or each 6 weeks, really, when they close a unit, they are able to measure the progress of the student and the progress of their instruction and make sure that they've achieved the goal that was set. The significant change this year for elementary was we had to stop thinking about what's called the SMART goal, which really only required you to move students who were at a level 2 to a level 3 or a level 3 to a level 4, to really looking at our goal, if we have taught something, is 80% of students are proficient in what we've taught, because 80% is what represents tier 1 in strong instruction. And at first, teachers were taken aback by that. And then once they saw that they were actually getting those results, they were disappointed if they only got to 77% proficiency. And it really shifted to the trajectory of how we set goals in our system and what they know our students are able to accomplish as a result of it. And so the data teaming and the data analysis continue to be essential factors as to what we work through with our instructional leaders and with our teaching staff. Next slide. And our other big focus, and I think any principal can quote Lori and I at this point in time, is the things that we work on in terms of data analysis, common planning time, and walkthroughs. Walkthroughs is where we see the rubber meet the road in terms of what we are expecting to have happen in classrooms. We can talk about anything we want in our SEPs and in our plans and in our visions and ideas, but until we get in classrooms and see what's actually happening, we don't have a true picture of how we're impacting student outcomes. And so as a result, we've put a very strong emphasis on getting into classrooms and providing effective feedback to teachers so that we can move their instruction. So all administrators in our system conduct walkthroughs. They conduct them individually, they conduct them in pairs, and then we do something at both the elementary and middle level called learning walks, where we bring the entire instructional team, principals, assistants, directors, and instructional supervisors to walk through an entire school building and visit their classrooms, and then come back and talk about what we see in terms of practice and next steps for that building. It's a very powerful model that is a benefit to both the building principal who's being visited and the principals in the room who are observing, good practices and challenges and practices and learning how to work through them as a team. I do have to highlight that one of the most powerful things I've seen happen through the walkthroughs, and principals this year more than ever have commented on the fact that they are able to use the walkthroughs to take what they taught teachers or what their coaches have taught teachers in professional development, go and see it in the classroom in practice, provide feedback to that teacher to make necessary tweaks or to send the coach in to follow up to make those necessary tweaks. And it's resulting in a change in teacher practice, which is the whole purpose of doing professional developments and walkthroughs. And we've called it for a long time closing the loop, but I feel like this is the first year where principals are naming that they're seeing that in play because they've made the commitment to getting into the classroom and seeing those practices executed, and teachers are getting to a point where they're comfortable getting that feedback and accessing the resources that they need. And so as a result, people were able to transform math RTI, transform the fact that they can walk into every classroom and see learning targets posted and explained effectively, that, you know, teachers are using particular strategies that have been occurring in PD. And talked about that. A big shift I will though emphasize is the feedback, the importance of giving feedback, not only in writing, but in person. So what I've displayed for you is the dashboard for our walkthroughs. And so when principals and administrators do walkthroughs, they can immediately go in and see the data, which I think has been a powerful motivator for our administrators, is to go in and see how many they each can accomplish. And to know that if this person's getting those done, I can also get them done also. If you had looked at our walkthrough data this time last year, it was around 600 walkthroughs. And so we, within the first 3 months of school, had blown past that number because principals were in, I keep saying principals, administrators were seeing the value of getting into classrooms and talking with one another about instruction. And then being able to talk to Lori and I about what they were seeing and why they were seeing it. And you can see the variety of areas in which they are going into to look at classroom instruction in both ELA, math, social studies, and science. We were even able to incorporate what standards that were being looked at and developed. And we've talked about earlier in this year about the fact that they're going in and intentionally looking for culturally responsive educational practices as well. And the data matches what the focuses of the SEPs were, particularly at the elementary level, where student voice was a significant factor, because we talked about if students aren't doing the talking, they're not the ones doing the learning and engaging effectively in that learning. So we're very proud of this, but Jen Houlihan, who has helped lead this work, has always emphasized, and we'll continue to emphasize, as much as we care about them getting into classrooms frequently, we also want to emphasize the quality with which we are providing feedback to teachers when we are in their spaces, so that it continues to be a valuable practice. So we were able to conduct 813 walkthroughs K through 6, that includes paired walkthroughs. And just so you can get a sense of the trends, the areas of focus were student engagement, standards-based or driven instruction, which has been a very big emphasis, I would say, across the system, is really diving deeply and understanding the level to which students have to be taught and understand the standards. Again, student voice, learning targets. Task complexity is a bit jargony, but it really focuses on whether or not the activities being presented for students to complete matches the rigor of the standard as intended. And so what we don't want to see happening is teachers saying that this is a standard we're teaching, but the activity that students are actually practicing aren't preparing them for that standard. And so we've done a lot of professional development around what that looks like, and then are going back in to see to make sure that the tasks that are being placed in front of our children are appropriately challenging. And the math number talks is very popular because our math department has done a really focused look at particular strategies that are effective and of the appropriate complexity. And so principals had a concentrated effort at the elementary level to go and see those things in practice. And so same trends that I mentioned before, the standards, access to grade level material at core instruction, which I think is a bit of a shift that I do want to talk for just a second, that in differentiating, sometimes we were differentiating away from what we needed, the level at which we needed students to perform. And that's not the purpose. Our purpose in differentiating is really to scaffold students up to the level that we need them to perform, so that everyone has access to what is the grade level standard. And so we continue to see that as an area of focus that we work towards, so all students have the access that they are entitled to, and that we as the educators figured out the way to give them that access, because our students, and I've said this probably 100 times on the board floor, think at a much higher level than they may read, write, or do other things, but it doesn't prevent them from engaging in learning if we provide them the correct level of access.
Okay. Instructional walkthroughs at the secondary level. So similar to the elementary, at the middle and high school level, we have conducted 677 walkthroughs as of March 3rd. The majority of the walkthroughs completed to date have really focused primarily on the core areas, ELA and math at the middle level, and the 4 cores at the high school level. At the middle level, the focus has been on ELA and math as a result of the ELA and math indicators in each school's steps and what we have identified as a priority in our steps. The high school walkthroughs align with the areas of need in the Regents exams and the overall pass rates in those classes. the leaders, both district and building, will continue as we move along to increase the frequency at which encore classes are visited in order to continue to grow teachers' practices in all academic areas. But the focus to this point has really been, not that we have not completed walkthroughs with encores, the focus has really been on the cores. So as Cecily mentioned, there are really two types of walkthroughs that we are engaging in at the secondary level. Both building level instructional walkthroughs, where building district conduct individual and paired walkthroughs, which allows for dialogue between the administrators and explicit feedback to the teachers in a timely manner. And this has really proven to be, I always say that every conversation is professional development. And this holds true when our principals are having those conversations with our instructional supervisors. It really is an opportunity for professional development through those conversations. And then again, like Cecily mentioned, our learning walks, just like last year, we have been rotating in our middle school principal meetings to different buildings each month, which allows principals and to visit classrooms in other schools and have dialogue around instructional practices across all of the middle schools. And in that process, the feedback is provided to the teacher jointly, written between the district and building leaders. And as a middle level team, leadership team, we look at the trends from the school that we're conducting those learning walks in, and we leave the principal with a really comprehensive understanding of the trends that we saw in that building and provide them with some next steps to move their building forward. The focus of each walkthrough is really based on what has been identified as a look for priority in each of the school's improvement plan. But based on the walkthrough data that has been collected across the middle schools and high schools, which includes AIC and Tony Clement, the focus has mostly included, as you can see in the data, around engagement, both behaviorally and cognitively. And I'll include questioning in the cognitive engagement, and then again on differentiation. But the two areas that I'll just summarize tonight or highlight tonight are really around differentiation and engagement. And I just want to remind everyone, for the sake of the presentation, that differentiation of instruction is really about the way that we deliver instruction through what we teach and how we teach it. So think about that around the content and the process. So what the walkthrough data really shows up here is that what is being taught needs to be differentiated to meet the needs of the diverse learners in the classroom, and that it's not just a one-size-fits-all approach. We are moving in the right direction, and we are seeing shifts in differentiation through the walkthroughs. However, it is not consistent across all classrooms and content areas. So until we see that consistency in all classrooms and content areas, we will continue to focus on differentiation to meet the needs of the learners. In addition, the data also shows that especially in our core classes, that the majority of our students are doing the same work in whole group or in small group, regardless of the learner's needs. Again, this will continue to be an area of focus. As far as engagement is concerned, when we go into the classrooms, we're really looking at two types of engagement. Engagement from a behavioral perspective and also from a cognitive perspective. And when I talk about behavioral engagement, we're really meaning what a student's efforts are, participation is in compliance with the school or classroom's rules and structures conducive to high levels of engagement in the learning process. And then from a cognitive perspective, we're really looking at a student's interest and ownership of the academic tasks and monitoring their own learning during the lesson. So Cecily mentioned earlier that the secondary level has really focused our efforts. So again, instructional walkthroughs and common planning teams has really been a big push on my end with the building principals. And I know with Ms. Bechtel with the instructional supervisors as well. And this is a huge growth for us this year because we, again, I'm going to give kudos to Mr. Baker and his team for developing this the dashboards so we could really focus on and monitor what is happening in our common planning teams. But this data shows that this is a snapshot of our dashboard for common planning team walkthroughs, where our instructional supervisors and principals are going in and providing feedback in the common planning teams to our teachers. And this was a real strategic movement for us to put in place for our school and district leaders for the 1920 school year. So you can see that as of March 3rd, we had 368 common planning teams visited by our administrators, where specific and explicit feedback was provided to them around the work that they should be doing in the classroom. So of the 368 common planning team meetings that were observed or visited, 52% of the teams focused on instructional planning, which is the shift we wanted to see and what has been outlined in the school's comprehensive education plan. Furthermore, out of those meetings visited, 55% have shown that roles have been established. I think back to the last couple of years where we've had the system in place for common planning team or the structure, but what was happening in those common planning teams was not what we were hoping to see. But through this process, we have really been able to provide that feedback to ensure that those team meetings have established roles and responsibilities, agendas, minutes, and they are structured and focused on reviewing student work and data analysis of that student work. And 46% of those team meetings that have been visited have really been focused on reviewing student work. And 88%, and this is huge because this is not what we saw last year, 88% of the teams visited were maintaining minutes for each of those teams. If they weren't, feedback was being provided and the leaders were continuing to monitoring those teams. Noticings or trends, I would say that it has really been a strategic effort for school and district leaders to visit the common planning team meetings for this year. And we've seen a huge increase in the work that these teams have been doing as a result of that. Teams are more focused on data teaming with clearly defined roles and responsibilities. Our data teams, by the way, I forgot to mention this, are meeting twice a week, focusing on student work and common benchmark assessment data analysis. The other 2 days are spent more on the social emotional learning side of the house in the building with MTSS and our behavior specialists and social workers push into those. The data teams continue to develop and implement department formative assessments for the purpose of modifying the curriculum and best instructional practices. So by doing this work in common planning teams, we would hope that when we go back to the instructional walkthroughs, we will see teachers modifying and differentiating the instruction that is happening in class as a result of the data team work that is going on. I will say that through this process that in all of the feedback from the principals, that there is still a teacher need for continued professional development on how to better analyze student data. And I would say that this is true both at the middle and high school level, and to better acclimate them to the eDoctrina reports or the dashboards that have been developed through Ken's department. So those are the trends that we have seen through the common planning team, but I cannot say enough about how the common planning team dashboard has changed the landscape of our work that we've been doing in these team meetings. With that said, I'm turning it back over to my colleague, Cecily.
So we can actually advance. And just very quickly, as you can see, as evidence in our report this evening, we're progress monitoring at our level in a variety of ways, but very succinctly, both quantitative and qualitative. We can concretely see what walkthroughs are being done, what we're learning in learning walks, and the data analysis work done by our data teams and the common planning time dashboards. But we can also go in and see the qualitative data in terms of what we're seeing in classrooms in our observations and trends, how we're seeing practice change over time, and then preparing to see that impact and change of practice into our on the impact on the quantitative data. And as always, what we will do next is to continue to align the work and the focus of our efforts into the building SEPs so they don't sit separate and apart, just like we try to connect the DSIPs and the SEPs together. And with that, we will open for questions.
Board colleagues, thank you very much, both of you. That was a very extensive presentation. It's tremendous to see the work that you've done over the last year or so, really bringing those walkthroughs to life. It's really great to see. It's a totally different conversation than it was 3, 4, or 5 years ago. It's very, very noticeable, and I appreciate it. It's actually been one of the most difficult things for me as we've entered this new phase, is to feel like there's a slowdown or a pause as we were really hitting a stride on this. It's been very difficult, as I'm sure it has been for you. Meanwhile,
I just want to make one comment real quick, and I think Cecily will agree with this, is that the conversations between teachers and leaders, or Cecily and myself with the leaders, has really shifted from a congenial conversation to a collegial conversation around the data. And I go back to that statement I made before, where every conversation is really about professional development around this work. And that to me is what has shifted from even 4 years ago to now.
It's fantastic. It's so much progress, and let's hope that we're able to bring it back or continue in this new and different way to implement it. Ms. Smith, your microphone was unmuted for a moment there. Did you have a question?
I did. Probably comment and question. First, again, thank you both so much. I was thinking as I heard you both speak, how much clearer our path, our movement towards this equity and access vision, it's really, really showing here. And so just kudos for all the work that everyone is doing there. I did have a question about the instructional walkthroughs. I think Ms. McKenna, you said you're looking forward to going back to the walkthroughs. I was wondering, does this opportunity provide, this closure opportunity and this online remote learning and teaching, does it provide some opportunity to continue the walkthroughs? Does it give the school leader, especially with recorded instructional classes, a way to observe more of our teachers' work? I mean, there might, obviously with recordings like that, you're missing some of the student engagement, but there are other things that you've been working with our teachers on doing, and just wanted you to talk about the opportunities that this provides.
Yeah, so that's a really good question. And actually our APSTA colleagues have brought that up as well. And we are not using Google Classroom or Google Meet to evaluate our teachers in this method. It's all new to all of us, and it's a learning opportunity. And so we will not use this as an opportunity to make it evaluative.
But what they will do is principals, instructional supervisors, directors will have access to teachers' classrooms, so they can continue to go in, support, praise, because this is very difficult work that they're attempting. But we've made it really clear to them that we don't want to use this as a space where, your classroom isn't set up just right, or you should try to let them get in there and get a feel for the work, and then be able to ask questions, get support as needed. I can't say enough about our instructional supervisors and our coaches and the work that they've done leading up to this time, and the support that they're providing our principals to really help support and lead in this work.
Absolutely. Just thank you for that. I appreciate the piece on that the focus is not on, you're not evaluating, but but it is an opportunity to provide the kind of support that you've always been given, but to continue that during this very uncertain period. So thank you very much.
So Madam President, Member Smith, just to tag a little bit more onto that, during this time, this is an opportunity for us to really be able to strengthen the relationship piece that we've talked about, that relationship between the administrators and the coaches and the supervisors and the teachers, and truly do that supervision versus the evaluation. And so now you can look at the expertise in the content and that practice, but not look at the learning of the mechanism by which you're delivering that content as a barrier or something to take away from that. And so again, looking at this transition as an opportunity of growth, not only for our students, but also for the adults in our system.
I think Ms. Bechtel said earlier, academics for academics' sake for a little while we figure this out, and this has that same feel to it, right? It's an opportunity for us all to learn and grow without feeling critiqued or criticized. So it's a really great, well, it's a horrible thing that we're living through. It is an opportunity to try new things and learn new ways of being. Board colleagues, any other questions? I know that was a very extensive report on the walkthroughs and the data teaming, and it's a really terrific progress to see. Does anybody have any further questions on that? Ms. Wilson.
Sorry. I just had a question, maybe I just need for clarification. The teams are only teachers, or do they comprise the administrators also?
You're talking about the common planning teams?
Yes.
So at the elementary, the structure is it's usually composed of the grade level teacher. If there's a self-contained special education teacher on that grade level, they participate as well. It's an opportunity for reading teachers, ENL teachers to also push in as schedule is permitting. And so therefore you have experts on strategies and resources present with them. And then the instructional coach participates and sometimes helps to facilitate the meeting to make sure teachers feel comfortable with the process. And then administrators, similar to the secondary level, some administrators facilitate and run their common planning time meetings. Some administrators participate in their common planning time meetings, and some do more periodic checks on them. It really depends on where the team is at that time and what level of support that they need.
And that holds true at the secondary level as well. The reason why we've seen such an increase in our common planning team feedback cycle is because we made, we were really deliberate in developing a schedule for the 1920 school year where building level administrators and district administrators would visit those teams and provide feedback. And we've been holding pretty true to what we said we would do.
Okay, that's perfect. That was my question, because understanding the configuration kind of helps me understand their deliverables, that in addition to moving the needle, they're kind of like peer support in the sense of also adopting and implementing strategies too.
Else, or shall we move on? Well, thank you very much, ladies. We always appreciate the work that you do, and we're watching to see how it's going to play out over the next few months. I think that brings us to ENL, if I recall correctly.
That is correct. So at this time, Mr. Giglio is here. So welcome and thank you very much. We'll turn the time over to him for the ENL report.
Great. Thank you so much, Superintendent Adams, board members, community members, and importantly, my compañera, Rachel Stead, who is the principal of the Albany International Center. We'll be going over our program review for this current school year. And thanks to Mr. Baker for helping us out with our slides as we move forward this evening. So program overview, at a glance, what we look like for services across the city. We've got one administrator, 45 ENL teachers, one certified ENL teacher who serves as our ENL intake coordinator, and one secretary in our office. Rachel, did you want to talk about AIC a little bit in terms of staffing?
Hi, good evening, everyone. Yeah, we thought this would be a good point in the presentation, just to highlight some of the things from Albany International Center. One of the additions we had right at the end of last year was the Northern Rivers clinician, which helped to enhance our ability to deliver social emotional supports to students. She has a caseload of 20, or capacity of a caseload of 25, and I believe she's almost at capacity, which has been great to be able to see our students be able to get those services. Just a couple of other things related to Albany International Center that are, from the program review packet that you received. We think that we're starting to see some trends now that we're in year 3 with regard to enrollment, and we've seen a couple of things emerge. One of the things that we have seen is that we have tended to add roughly 50 students per year from September to June. So what we found was in year 1, we added about that amount. So we grew, and then we sent approximately 20 students. We transitioned approximately 20 students back to their home schools. Then in year 2, we kept a certain number of our population and grew again by about 50. Last year, we transitioned more students back to their home schools. And so then we started a little bit lower this year, but have continued to see growth. And so we think, it's still a little early because we're in year 3, but we think that we're seeing like a 2-year cycle where students come, they stay for a couple of years, and then we transition them back to the home schools. In terms of demographics, we certainly have seen a shift from our first year, where our primary language background for most of our students was Arabic. And at that point in time, I think we were about 30 to 35% Arabic speaking students and only about 1% Spanish. That has definitely shifted. At this point, we're up to almost 40% of Spanish speaking and Arabic. While we still have Arabic speakers in our school, the numbers are not as great. And so there's been a shift there. We've also seen growth in our students who come from several of the African nations who speak Swahili. We've also seen a lot of growth in the Dari and Farsi speaking populations, which are students who come primarily from Afghanistan, sometimes Turkey. And so we've definitely seen that shift in demographics. In terms of our academic successes, things that we are really excited about, another highlight from the program review is that we did have 87% of our students advance in English language proficiency last year as measured by the NYSESLAT. And something we were really excited about, we had a cohort of 29 students who were taking algebra, and as you know, they get multiple passes at that algebra regents. And so by the time January, that third pass in January came, all but one of those students had passed the algebra regents, which we were really excited and happy about. So those are some of the highlights from Albany International Center, and I'll turn that back over to Tom.
Great. Thanks, Rachel. So just moving us along, and I know that this is very familiar for many of us, but we're just finishing up our 5th year post CR Part 154 when that really came into being for us. And I'm really proud to say that as a district, I think we're just doing an awesome job in terms of upholding not only the legislation from a legal standpoint, but certainly in the spirit of it and what that means and looks like. And there's many layers at the point of entry or registration that need to be upheld with in terms of, conducting the home language questionnaire, make sure we're communicating in the language of preference, which is something you'll hear us refer a lot throughout the presentation today, an informal and formal parent or guardian interview. But I would also say we take it a step further than just what the regulations call for, with really making that relationship and that connection with our ENL coordinator and personally making sure that there's that connection between central registration and whatever school that child will be landing at, and making sure that that intake is going to be taking place at a place that's convenient and a time that's convenient for the parent or guardian at the school location itself. And the school personnel are notified and have conversations with our intake coordinator well in advance. And you guys are familiar as a board, I believe, with a lot of our wraparound services. Again, that goes well beyond CR 154 in terms of our partnerships with Whitney Young, and also some of our other community resources that we want to make sure that we're really supporting the whole child and the whole family as they make a transition into our school district. If we could advance, thanks, Kent. So what does our program budget look like? So our current FTE budget is right around 4.2 million. Our Title III immigrant for this past year was 0. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that when we get to our enrollment slide and why that's at a 0 for us. And then the third bullet you'll see there is Title III LEP at 155,000. So let's take a look at our trend. And this is a graph that I like to show you guys every year, just to take a look at trends and how we've been doing over the past several years. Obviously you can see that we crescendoed, and we actually are slightly down in terms of where we've been. And I think an analysis of that would be obviously some things that are going on at a national level in terms of, as Rachel alluded to, we a couple of years ago, we really had a huge influx of folks from the Middle East and Arabic-speaking countries, and there's been some restrictions on those countries, people from those countries and regions coming into our country. And we have had a slight uptick in Spanish-speaking students. However, that did affect, to a certain degree, total number of Ls. But we are still continuing to register kids. Some of the good news is we're also exiting Ls, right? Because it's just a point in time. It's not something that defines children forever. So it's a service that we give kids. So we still register approximately 200 English language learners, including 30 refugee students between July 1 and November 19th of this past fall. Now, before we advance the slide, I just wanted to say there's a formula for that bullet for the immigrant count, and you have to have a certain percentage increase on the immigrant count from your last year's in order to qualify for monies for that particular line. I work with Eileen Leffner from the grants department specifically on that. I don't have that formula off the top of my head for you, but basically an easy way to look at it is any type of downward trend in that population, we're not going to qualify for monies for this particular year. And we'll see how we do compared to this year to next year, if we're going to be able to get some of those monies for next year's budget. Languages spoken across our schools, I believe we're well over 50. And obviously that number fluctuates a little bit. It has been as high as 58 or 59, but it really doesn't dip below 50 typically. And for some of you that may know, probably about 3 years ago, I'd say, we had Burmese as maybe our main language for a lot of our Ls. And as you guys know, Albany is a federal relocation city. So, our friends in DC, and we have a USCRI satellite office here in North Albany that we work well with. Jill Peckinpah as the director, actually just down the street from AIC. And every July 1, the federal government doesn't really tell us, but we start to see different regions of families come to us. And about 3 years ago, we really didn't see any more folks from Myanmar or Southeast Asia really making the transition to the city. And then for a while, it was some of our Middle Eastern speaking families, Arabic speaking families coming from Middle Eastern regions. And lately we've been seeing somewhat of a uptick from folks from Spanish speaking countries, some folks from Central America, and some of the island territories as well as we move forward. So jumping a little bit into those two big buckets we always talk about in the district, social emotional bucket, what is that like for our children? And then the academic outcomes for children. If we take a look at these discipline incidents, at first glance, it's a little shocking if you take a look at the graph on the left in terms of in-school suspension trends, really doubling from one year to the next. And then also taking a look at out-of-school suspensions dipping down. And I apologize, the font's kind of small, so I apologize for that. What I can extrapolate from this is in conjunction with the work that Dr. Kenzoni Ball and PPS has been doing with MTSS and trying to bring those two buckets together. What I can say is we're keeping our kids in school more rather than going right to an out-of-school suspension type of situation. So in one sense, I find, yes, we don't want in-school suspensions to go up, but we did have our out-of-school suspensions go down. So we kind of had a little bit of symbiotic movement happen. And also, we've been trying to identify more therapeutic responses, right? So we know that suspensions are not the answer, and we know that suspensions aren't an intervention. So I do give my colleagues in PPS a lot of credit for making sure that our Ls, and in particular, a lot of the trauma that, obviously trauma can manifest itself in many different ways for many different kids. And I'm not explaining every behavior away, by the way, but we really have to understand the mechanics behind the behavior so that we can help support the child move forward in a healthy way. So we're excited about the work we're doing, but we also don't want to have our heads in the sand about like everything is perfect and everything's fine. There's work for us to be done in this realm. And I'm excited that we're partnering with our friends from PPS. And I know that Rachel's done an awful lot of dynamic work around how she even structures her daily meetings with her team with a standing meeting and how they focus on individual care. So I don't know if you wanted to talk about that, Rachel, about some of the newer things that you've been working on to try and deal with some of the discipline incidents.
Hi, sure. So our student support team has been trained in restorative practices. And one of the things that we have done to structure, the social emotional support that we provide to students is that members of the student support team have been pushing into classrooms to do circles with students. A lot of times we think about the restorative circles as being something that happens after there's some kind of an issue or some kind of a problem. But we are doing these in a proactive way to help build relationships across cultures with students, to give them an opportunity to hear about each other. One of the things that they find really surprising that was really interesting to us is to learn that that their peers have similar experiences, both prior to their arrival here in the United States and now as they're experiencing being a newcomer here in this country, and that helps build bridges. So as they're working on all of that, and I have to give a shout out to my school psychologist and my social worker because they've done a great deal to do this. But that whole process and that system, I think, helps us when there are issues among students, or maybe there's a potential issue that's bubbling up. And we have had students who have approached the social worker to say, I think I need to do a circle with another student because I think that there could potentially be an issue. And so that's one of the things that we do try to emphasize with the students, that there are adults here in the building who can help you, and that's exactly what we want them to do, is to be proactive in that way, so that we're not going down the path of suspension. It's an alternative to that. The other thing I will say is that one of the ways that we've built our system at AIC is that all of our support team members are essentially a case manager for a grade. So information and data about students kind of moves up the chain and then back down the chain again, because they are liaisons with the grade level teams. So for example, my school counselor is the middle school liaison. And so every morning there's a standing meeting in my office with the entire support team. We literally stand for 20 minutes in my office. And, if there's a concern about a student, it's brought to the team, and then information can be brought back to the teachers. And so, we have that constant flow of information so that we can support our students.
Great. Thanks, Rachel. And again, this is district-wide data, but I just wanted Rachel just to talk a little bit about some of the newer programming she's kind of developed, and we're trying to continue to bring that across the district so that we're obviously not just focusing on AIC, but all of our L's all throughout all of our schools. As we transition to that other side of the house for academics, I am excited to say that with the new ESSA standards, that 18 out of 19 of our schools for our L's as subgroups have met their MIP, and that's the measure of interim progress. And I believe that information may still be embargoed, so I won't talk in detail about it, other than what I'd like you to do is and again, I apologize for the font of the graph, seeing it on the screen here. But really what I want to do is have us think differently of how we think about outcomes for kids in a sense. And what we want to take a look at some of the unfinished learning that's taking place for L's as opposed to typical peers. And I think over the years, I've presented to you guys how we've been doing with our course pass rate. And I continue to be super proud of that. I mean, it's really an outstanding metric that we have. But I really want to try and push myself to figure out how because it's all about child outcomes and student outcomes. And it's all about regents and not only getting kids graduated, but really having them being ready for college and career, right? So it's not just okay even to graduate, increase the graduation rate and have successful regents, but we want them to really be fully living, that vision and mission statement that we have. And so part of that is, while we are in good standing in terms of growth versus achievement, we want to keep pushing for what that would look like. And, listening to the assistant superintendents previously just talk about, and Karen as well, about, so like what disciplines, what cycles are we embedding to really try and impact student outcomes? And we're excited that, I think, and I heard you talk about, we're just starting to get some traction, and obviously we're dealing with an event that really we haven't dealt with before. But I believe that inertia is going to continue to manifest itself even through our distant learning, with how we are supporting teaching and learning in cycles of feedback, with how folks are getting and receiving and acting on that feedback that we give them, all towards increasing outcomes for kids. So delving a little bit deeper into some plans, since this report was submitted to you guys a few months ago, Ms. McKenna led a group of secondary administrators to a BOCES training around some of the new ESSA metrics and what we can do moving forward for us. And so some of the outcomes for those were goals that we're going to have specific to each of our buildings. So making sure that each building has and we're addressing any type of chronic absenteeism that any of subgroups of L's may have in their building. We want to also, for the high school, we really want to focus now with ESSA really measuring 4, 5, and 6 year graduation cohorts. We really need to figure out and track how our kids are moving through the secondary system, and in particular, putting names and faces with our data so that every kid has a story. And when the kids are starting to get close to aging out, and unfortunately that is kind of some of the analysis that we've come up with, is that some of our kids, they're just kind of running out of time before they turn 21. As they come to the country, they might only be 17 or 18 when they're starting school. And so we've got some innovative ways that we're trying to think about how we can program and plan for that. But getting back to what the assistant superintendents talked about It's all about making sure that we have those daily cycles of feedback going on, all leading towards outcomes for kids as we move forward. And I think I also heard Mrs. McKenna talk about the DABLE process and what that looks like in terms of accountability for the administrators, whether they're building administrators or district administrators. How are we supporting our kids moving forward? And it's not just about what we're doing in the standalone program, but really we've been focusing on the last 2 years for general ed and content area teachers to be working with ENL teachers on co-teaching and really making sure that our Ls, just like all of our children in Albany, absolutely deserve a rich, engaging core experience every day for them moving forward. We can move the slide up if you please. So one of the things before, our lives kind of changed was having an analysis of what we can do, was a recommendation of an ENL elementary instructional coach. Understanding, kind of just getting back to how can we get into more classrooms, not just ENL teachers, but what happens when the ENL teacher is not there? How are we supporting the core teachers in delivering that differentiated, rigorous, standard-based experience for our kids moving forward? And I'm kind of remiss because I really wanted to start our presentation just giving a huge shout out to our whole community, really, to be honest with you. I think as I've heard you guys talk about, adversity doesn't build character, it kind of reveals it. And so I think it's been a wild 3 weeks for us, but it's been really an amazing 3 weeks for me in terms of how we've been able to mobilize community mentors, advocates, staff, folks from all 3 units, what we can do. I want to give a huge shout out to all the food site food providers, with Lisa Finkenbinder, also with making sure that our families that have food insecurities, that we're being thoughtful around that. The entire technology push, really monumental. I don't know that much about technology, but I think it takes at least 2 or 3 years to try and plan how you're going to get devices home in that sense. And so while we may not have been perfect, one of the mantras I've been giving my department is all we need to do is be better tomorrow than we were today. And we're going to get through this and it's going to be great. But even though it's been a unique situation that we've been thrust upon, I'd be remiss if I just didn't kind of comment on how galvanizing this experience has been through us, not only for our Ls, but for our whole community as well. So I kind of wanted to start with that, but I jumped in with it. So at this time, Rachel and I are happy to take some questions.
Thank you very much for the presentation. I know that people have questions for you, and it's really been exciting for us to watch this come from really an idea stage, especially at the AIC, and our support and efforts to be in compliance with CR 154 into the reality that it is. So it's been wonderful to watch it all happen. I think Ms. Smith wanted the first question.
Sure, great. And thank you both. I'm just delighted with your presentation and the passion out of both of you for our students and for this particular population. I wanted to just ask a question about the mentors' involvement. And actually it was a bigger question that I had wanted to ask of the superintendent. In what ways are our mentors connecting with our students, particularly during this period of time? And I can imagine our ENL students and some of our more vulnerable students really needing that support. So I was delighted to hear you mention the mentors and wanted to see if you could expound upon that.
Yeah, if I may, Ms. Smith, I appreciate the question. And I think it's just been such an asset. I think the fact that we've spent several years trying to build up relationships with our mentors and community members, we were able to really unify forces around logistics, right? Because for me and for our Ls in particular over the last 2.5 weeks, it's really been about logistics. How are we making sure that people feel safe and acknowledged? How are we dealing with food insecurities? And how are we making sure, as Superintendent Adams talked about, we're not just saying equity, we're trying to live it. And that means, you know, making sure that we're really being thoughtful around all of our members of our community. And it may be difficult, right? So we're going to go ahead and have every single English language learning family receive a phone call in the language of their preference. And that was a big project. And yep, there were a few wrong numbers or what have you. But to your point, I was able to kind of help triangulate a little bit of information with members of the Refugee Roundtable. Obviously, I think you guys know Dahlia. She's been amazing in mobilizing. There's about 250 folks on that listserv. Jill Peckinpah, I mentioned her before. She's the director of USCRI. And she's just been unbelievable in communicating with us, with members that actually list her office as a contact number, in a sense, for us to move forward. And then again, as we move in and out of the different departments, whether it's, you know, our technology department with Mr. Baker customizing certain pickup zones for our L families, where I had so many ENL teachers volunteering, I had to send some of them home because it was like, we're not supposed to have more than 10 people here, you know, but it's a wonderful thing to have. And that also goes along with the food service. And again, I really want to give a shout out to not only Lisa, but also each food site manager. You know, Ebony comes to mind from Hackett because I did some volunteering there, and she was just absolutely amazing in being a problem solver. And it's, as you guys could tell by the data that the superintendent presented, day one, I think we were able to like support 1 or 2 meals, and we're like, oh, what's up with that? Well, exponentially every day it grew to the point where we had like a line of folks that we were able to serve. And, you know, and those food workers, they're able to be on the lines from day one, and we're able to help our mentors and community members are able to help communicate with me. Maybe folks that didn't fill out the survey, maybe they don't, for whatever reason, they have a hardship and they can't make it to the food site. We're able to work and figure out how can we get around some of those barriers so that people are getting what they need.
Thank you.
Ms. Wilson.
Thank you, and congratulations on being on year 1 of your curriculum review. I had the pleasure of seeing how that process works, so congratulations.
Thank you.
And I was curious, I saw in the charts in the program review, like the deeper program review, that really the greatest representation of students are in the entering phase. So I know there's other phases naturally, and there's students at all of them. However, I was just curious, or I can imagine that there's probably a lot of robust development in that area to address that. But are you equally not necessarily paying attention to, but are you equally investing in developing or breaking out those other areas that students can be in?
Oh, that's a great question. Yes. I mean, in particular, like I said, we tend to have a lot of entering students that come to us, but one of our areas of focus now, and obviously there's so many layers and components for CR 154. Well, we want to make sure that we are also trying to serve our commanding students. And those are the students that they, you know, if you think of it on a scale of 1 to 5, 1 is entering, 5 is commanding. Hey, wow, you hit it. You reached that threshold. Well, you still are entitled to services for 2 years after that. And depending on the unit of study chart, if it's K-8 or if it's 9-12, what are you doing? And we have spent so much time focusing on our new refugees and our beginners. To be quite honest with you, I appreciate the question, because to be candid with you, I think we need to be doing better for how we can serve them. So I've been meeting with Candy Antonetti, who's the house principal, who's in charge of ENL programming of about 275, 300 Ls at the high school. We need to formalize a support plan for those commanding students, so that even though they may not be getting all the big hours of service anymore, they still need to be getting supported, whether it's through our after-school tutoring program or having ENL teachers be available throughout the day to support them. We're currently in the process of finding ways that we could support them. And also, I want to say Rachel's done a great job in, okay, so what happens after 2 years of AIC, right? The kids are, every year the kids typically move up a level or so. So what happens when they transition over to a middle school or the high school? And we've done some great work. Rachel's done some amazing work in getting all the guidance counselors together, getting the instructional leaders together, and also doing visits, site visits, to see how are we supporting those kids that are progressing through those upper level of L programming. So the answer is we're aware of it and we can always do better, but I'm excited that we're formalizing some of those supports more.
I wanted to ask you, first of all, I wanted to acknowledge the tremendous work on the algebra regents. That's just amazing, astonishing, fantastic work. And also on the nicest lot scores are so tremendous, really terrific to see. I did wonder if you could talk a little bit about one of the data points that seemed a little troubling, which was the very large jump in chronic absenteeism. It was astonishing, like 23 to 43%. And so not only did it go up, but it went up much more dramatically than the chronic absentee numbers from the rest of the general population. I'm wondering what your analysis is of that.
It's the number one issue that I have on our action plan that we need to do before anything else can happen, right? We need to make sure that the kids are coming to school, that they're feeling supported and that they're feeling successful. And I think there's a gamut of analysis as to what is going on around that. But I think for us, it's especially even when the children get into the secondary level, we want to make sure that kids have to have meaningful relationships. I mean, this is something I think that we've known in our district, but they have to have those meaningful relationships. And Rachel talked a little bit about, authorizing ourselves to think a little bit differently how we serve kids. So that means, you know what, I'm going to have a support team and I'm going to expand it even more than what some of our protocols call. And we're going to have case managers and we're going to make sure that there's no diffusion of responsibility, so to speak, so that every child has a story. What's our child's story? Let's take a look. And again, we don't want to be doing stuff like once a year to say, oh, this was our chronic absentee rate this year. But I really enjoy how both Lori and Cecily have pushed us to make sure that we're looking at cycles of data at least on a quarterly basis, and really, to be honest with you, on a monthly basis, in terms of what's going on. And then really we have to be accountable to ourselves. And so what's the action plan that what is the different behavior that the adults are going to do so that there's different outcomes for children? And that's the number one thing that I think I need to make sure we have starting our new school year, is that every building, and I'm supporting every building leadership team with a very clear, measurable, actionable chronic absenteeism intervention plan for each building, specifically for the subgroup of L's.
Okay, I did find it strange. I would have expected L's to always be a little bit more chronically absent than other students because of whatever cultural issues were happening, transitional issues were happening. I was surprised to see the jump from last year to this year. I mean, we didn't get worse at this, did we?
No, and I don't know. I certainly don't want to try and explain it away, but I can't say that there's one specific issue or thing that's taking place other than, let's continue to examine it and let's be proactive and find out how we're making sure that kids are feeling connected. How are we making sure that, we're not waiting multiple days for a kid to be out before we're sending someone to the house. Yes, we have Lily too, who is a homeschool coordinator at AIC, but we've been trying to empower the rest of our homeschool coordinators and give them professional development around how they can do outreach, particularly for L's. I think they do a great job of it now, but let's figure out how we can be more deliberate and more proactive rather than wait till the end of the year to kind of be like, oh, wow, that was a really big issue for us.
Mr. Alaminiawi, you had a question? Thanks, Tom.
If I might interject, one of the things that I think it's always something that you have to make sure that you're cognizant of is whenever something becomes monitored and tracked to the level that we are doing with chronic absences, you're going to see more. I will liken it to when you think about when the different criteria and notification practices came about for bullying with DASA. You saw a spike because now it's being reported and recorded differently. Not that it wasn't there, you just have a different light and a different mechanism for tracking that. And so we are seeing that spike in some instances, and that could be one of the reasons, especially with our Ls. We have a better way of tracking chronic absences now than what we had before. And so now in looking at that, it makes a difference, and those numbers should go up for a little bit, and then they should level out, because then we're better on the other end of what do we do to assist our students with coming to school.
Thank you very much. I did wonder if that was part of it. It was such a high jump. It just seemed not consistent with the normal way things go. They don't normally jump quite that much. Mr. Almagnawi, did you have a question? Oh, I'm sorry, Tom.
I'm sorry. I was just going to say, yeah, I think that's a great point. And also, I think we have to figure out what we're doing for our kids that maybe are like aging out too. I think some of the numbers, like to the superintendent's point, that we are tracking more. But what happens when kids, they're turning 20 and they're realizing that maybe they really don't have a shot at getting that diploma? What can we do to try and figure out how to get them connected moving forward with programming?
Okay, Hassan, your turn.
Thank you. Tom, great job with the algebra passing rate. That's fantastic. I kind of had a clarification question about, you mentioned something about money lost due to low admission.
Yeah, if you go back to the slide that it talks about, there's three. Thank you, Mr. Baker. If you look at the second bullet for the immigrant count, it's there's a formula that the state uses, and you have to forgive me because I don't have the formula handy right now. But basically, it has to do with, there has to be a certain percentage increase of your immigrant count as compared to your previous year to qualify for that pot of money from the state. And
on
then
a yearly basis?
I'm sorry?
On a yearly basis?
They do it year to year. So we didn't qualify this year. And if you go to the bar graph, you see that we actually went down slightly in L enrollment in particular. And we didn't qualify for that amount of money. I can follow up and tell you exactly in the past. I don't believe it to be a huge amount of money, but
right. My next question about that was, does it affect how we teach these kids? If it's not that much, it wouldn't be.
I believe that it's more around, it doesn't affect like the basic core elements of our programming, but it would be more around some of the extracurricular extended day type things we could do, or possibly some enrichment over the summer. Okay. But no, we don't have, there's not like salaries or classes tied to that line. No.
Okay, thank you. And just something that kind of is crossing my mind, how are we adjusting for the remote learning for these students that need translators?
So we, there's a couple things. I sit on the L Leadership Council for New York State. So that is a monthly call that we have with our leaders at State Ed, specifically around what are we doing to support L programming. And the past couple of weeks, we've had several phone calls, as you can imagine, in terms of asking the field, what is it that you guys are recommending for guidance for supporting Ls for remote learning? First two things they said: make sure that you're reaching out to all of your families and checking in on them, seeing how they're doing. And what is your game plan for getting devices into their hands? And so needless to say, I know that you guys just listened to all the details of how we game plan for that. So that was really the state's guidance for the past 2.5 weeks for us moving forward. There's been a survey that we've given information on how we should do it moving forward. So to get to the heart of your question a little bit more from an instructional lens, very much by design, the more is not better in this case for us, not initially, not for our Ls. What we want to do is, I've been directing our ENL teachers to continue to collaborate with the core teachers and general ed teachers and what are they doing to enrich and truly co-teach, co-plan, and co-deliver that rigorous grade level standard remotely for kids. We couldn't do that unless we started getting the Chromebooks in the hands of the kids. So now that I feel like we've really done a good job doing that, and Mr. Baker has talked about a wave 2, eventually we're going to talk about how can we, anybody that we miss, we want to make sure that they have access to the technology. I will be continuing to upload links that not only ENL teachers, but because we're all teachers of L's, that's one of my mantras that I talk to all of the teachers about, especially like, what do you do when you don't have the ENL teacher in there co-teaching and they're virtually supporting another colleague? General ed teachers and content ed teachers need to have access to the different things that are available. However, I want to be very streamlined and make sure that as guidance should be coming out next week from New York State on what are we doing, for example, for the units of study. We just talked about that there's 5 units of study and there's different amounts of time for standalone and push-in that each level should be receiving. Because we are doing somewhat of a modified experience for kids remotely, we can't do the actual levels, the 5 levels of units of study, because there's just not enough time with the remote learning. So we're going to be getting guidance next week from the state on what that might look like, but it always starts with that core experience, right? So L's need to have that access to that rigorous, standards-driven core experience. And it's our ENL teachers that need to be working and supporting and differentiating what that looks like for our kids. And then from a secondary standpoint, what's it going to look like to have standalone classes? Are we going to have designated times where our ENL teachers are going to have access to the different children because they access multiple grades, some kind of hybrid version of that. So I'm going to be having more information I'll be disseminating to my teachers next week as we move forward.
Thank you so much.
Ms. Smith, I think you had a final question on this topic.
Yes, thank you. And perhaps not so much a question, but maybe I'm just going to ask if you're probably keeping track of this through your touch points with students and families. But as you know, just out in our society, and I've certainly had this happen at my daughter's college, even though they're not physically on campus, there is still a bit of, well, more than I should say, bullying going on. And particularly in this era of the COVID-19, where there are folks, including our president, accusing and attacking the Asian community and blaming the Asian community for this virus. And so I'm just wanting to make sure, and I'm sure you are, keeping track of how our students are feeling, how they being treated, because even in this electronic world, that people are still able to bully others. And so not so much a question, but just, wanting to acknowledge that, we're still, as a district, and I hear it from the superintendent and from everyone, we're still trying to promote and be the kind of school community that we want to be. And so the maintaining some of that cultural caring and respect and all of that stuff is still important. And just really wanting to express that.
And I appreciate that, Ms. Smith. And I just, my final thought on it is I just want to say, by being proactive and making very purposeful steps and statements as leaders, whether you're a classroom teacher as a leader, a teaching assistant as a leader, a building principal or district administrator as a leader, but being very purposeful about how we continue to view our L population as a real asset in our city, and being very purposeful and vocal about it, I think is one of the ways that we're going to try and continue to move forward. But it's a comment that is very duly noted. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you again, Tom, for all your work, yours and your teams, and you too, Rachel. We really appreciate everything you're doing for our students, especially the extra steps you're taking to make sure that they're integrated in during this transitional time that we're all living through.
Great, thank you.
All right, moving on to budget.
Well, good evening, and Ms. Roaring and I will kind of do a little tag team approach with regard to our budget. As you know, we did receive state runs yesterday. We've had an opportunity to do some preliminary work with that, but definitely more detail will be forthcoming. We will start our presentation, as always, with making sure that this is always key for me, because everything we do has to align with our vision, mission, and goals. And this is where the rubber for me really meets the road, because you have to follow the dollars. And if the dollars of a school district are not addressing the goals that the board has set forth, that the district works together and sets forth, then there are significant concerns. And so I'm always very, I know it sounds kind of weird, but I'm always really excited when we talk about budget, because it is one thing that I'm very confident about in our district, that our dollars truly follow our students, and we focus our money on our goals. And you'll see that at every turn. Even when we are in a situation now, as we go to the next slide and looking at where we are in terms of the challenges that we're facing with a budget that has been reduced largely, and also with some of the unbudgeted items and underfunded items that we desperately needed over the past year to address some of the gaps with our students, and looking at how we're going to move forward. Also, what are some of those strategies for closing the budget gap? And so when we look at that, I wanted to start with where we were for 2019, 2020 for this school year. This was the adopted budget, and I know you've seen it before, so I won't go into detail, but this was our adopted budget last year. And just so that you have an idea of what were some of the things that we needed in order to add to this budget with regard to what we needed for our students. On the next slide, you're going to see what some of those underfunded and under-budgeted items were. And so when we look at, we needed to add 9.6 FTEs. We needed after-school nurses, because we believe in after-school activities for our students. We know that these activities are important for our children, because many times if it's not done at our school, they may not be able to enjoy those extracurricular activities. Also, knowing that we have to engage our support staff as we look at different clerical positions, security positions, maintenance and operations, as we look at ensuring that we have quality facilities for our students. We know that there was an increase in special education tuition. We also had some increases in our utilities. And then when we look at curriculum stipends really as a whole, these are the impact of extra hours for teachers when they are teaching on their prep, when they're doing things before and after school. It's a catch-all for all of those things that we do outside of the regular school day to enhance that delivery of instruction for our students. This is just, the next slide is just a pictorial, just to show that pie chart of that adopted budget by category. And as you can see, most of what we spend, it's on people. It's the salaries, the benefits. Again, we do have that tuition that is largely out of our control, but within our budget, the salaries and benefits, the way that we invest in people so that we can deliver that quality instruction for our children is extremely important. On the next slide, you'll see that rollover budget, which is the adopted budget, adding in what we needed to do last year in order to meet the needs of our students and enhance that delivery of instruction, and then looking at the difference. So these were the adds over the course of the year. And then you can see the next slide, which is just a pictorial view of that as well. And it is the investment in our people. Our next slide, it shows what are we going to do about that difference, that $15 million gap, if you will. And so we have a large number of vacancies. That's where we're starting. So we're looking at the fact if we were able to reduce in some of those vacant positions, what is it that we could do without decimating our programming? There are some savings that we can capture in equipment, contractual services, looking at reducing our conference attendance, things that are not grant funded. In other words, any of the travel or conferences that impact the general fund, what might those things be? Ms. Roaring has been really good at detailing out within our utilities where we may be able to get some savings. You'll see that there's some adjustments there with transportation, and then we have our supplies, and then reducing some of the spending that we have with BOCES. And so with that, those other recommendations that we may be able to address, I've already talked about the vacancies, but looking at a reduction in overtime costs. And that reduction is not just simply cutting overtime, because you can't cut without a plan, but looking at how, as a system, we structure our activities, our facility use, our athletics, all of those kinds of things. There are some things that we can do as a system in our own organization of how do we utilize our facilities and combine and consolidate some of that use into fewer buildings. And so we would be able to reduce some of those overtime costs. And we're examining that right now. So we don't have a final answer, but we know that we're able to have some cost savings there. And then looking at staffing ratios based on enrollment. As we look over time with our enrollment, we see that our enrollment, it fluctuates a little bit, but yet our staffing continues to increase. And so looking at what is a staffing ratio that we could make some adjustments with so that we are more in alignment with our enrollment based on the number of individuals that we have here. So at this time, I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Roaring to talk about the revenue pieces.
Good evening. As we look at the 2021 revenue, we start with our base of the $260.35 million of the 1920 budget. We are anticipating an increase of about $1 million in state aid. Right now, looking at a tax levy increase of $2.3 million, reducing our appropriated fund balance use for 2021, and other increases in revenue or adjustments maybe in our interest earnings, our insurance rebates, adjustments to utility tax receipts, and our Medicaid reimbursements, for a total increase of $1.2 million. If we look at some different tax levy scenarios, a tax levy at 1% would mean additional budget reductions for us of $1.1 million. At 1.5, it'd be another $538,000. Go ahead. When we look at the revenue by category for next year at this time, our proposed revenue has an overall increase of $1.2 million. The biggest adjustments that we'll see are in our property tax levy, our interest, fees, and reimbursements, state aid, and our reduction in appropriated fund balance. We have an adjusted rollover gap of just over $15 million. When we adjust for the revenue increase and the budget reductions that Ms. Adams shared with you, we have a current gap of $7.7 million that we are going to be working on over the next couple of weeks. So next steps, we're going to further review the budget adjustments to make sure we are aligning with the revenue, respond to any board questions, continue to incorporate feedback from the board and community, and ultimately prepare the superintendent's proposed budget for the board's consideration. We have a special meeting with the board next Tuesday to have another budget presentation and update. We have a special meeting again scheduled on April 16th. And we have a little variability. We are not 100% sure on when our budget hearing or our newsletter and ultimate vote will be. We are waiting for additional guidance from the state, and we are still in the process of getting those budget community meetings scheduled and doing them virtually this year. Questions?
So thank you very much for the presentation. I'm in my sixth budget presentation. I'm grateful to have joined the board long after the fiscal crisis of 2007, but I have a lot of memories of that as a board watcher and as a parent, and it is really the hardest, most difficult budget that we have faced since my time on the board. I cannot stress to our community enough that this is a very significant gap in our budget. There will have to be significant changes in our district in order to meet this gap. I know the superintendent and Ms. Roaring and all of our staff are doing everything in our power to ensure that those changes have as little impact on students as possible. But $7 million, almost $8 million is a considerable amount of money for anyone, especially a district of our size. So with that introduction, and I'm sorry to be a little bit of a downer, but this is not an easy budget year. It's the most difficult one I've personally faced. And I think we need to really be quite frank about that from the beginning. Does anyone have any questions? I know we've had some chances to ask some detailed questions by email and whatnot, but if there are other questions people have for Ms. Roaring or the superintendent or comments, they would be welcomed now. Anyone? Everyone is just sitting in silence, or else perhaps my screen is frozen. It's hard to tell.
No questions. This is the time to burn the incense again. Start praying, because the next 2 weeks will determine, what really happens. And so, really, at this point, no questions.
Right, and this is Vicky. I was going to agree with Sridhar on that front, just sort of absorbing the shock of this budget that we're in. And I know that staff are doing everything they can, as you said, Ms. Savage, to mitigate this huge gap. And so I have no questions either, just wanting to kind of sit with that, but it's quite severe.
No questions.
So I also wanted to just comment and reflect on your, I'm sorry, Ms. Krejci, go ahead.
Oh, I wanted to say I don't have any questions, but I just have, just as a general comment, thank you for our administration, to Kimberly and Mrs. Adams for putting this together and for getting us in the best position we can be in, between having to go to virtual education and having to deal with less money than we expected. It's really a challenging time, but it's also given us some opportunities to do things in a new way. So I'm really trying to stay optimistic about what's to come next.
I wondered actually if you were ready to provide any initial thoughts about the financial impact of this closure. Obviously, we're spending more money on some things and less money on other things than we would be if we were in school. And do we have a sense yet of what that is going to mean for our end of year financial picture?
So I'll start. And one of the things that we are doing is we are tracking our expenses, just because we need to know that full impact. And so there's some things that we've been able to just absorb as part of the normal process of how we do business. But there are other things that we are seeing an impact. There are some things that are completely reimbursed. There are other things that are not. And so we're starting to see that some of the decisions that are coming our way, as far as like some of the guidance that we're getting with regard to waivers for food service, waivers for, different things that are coming out with regard to, for example, like the 180-day rule. How are those things going to be impacted? We are tracking those expenses, but we don't have a solid, clear picture. And because Kimberly is more engaged with the numbers, I will ask her to chime in. And if she has more insight at this time, then I'm fine with that.
I'm not going to say that we have a keen sense of a number per se, but we do know that without our traditional operations, we are saving some salary expenses and overtime in other areas, and we are reducing the amount of supplies that we're purchasing at this particular point in time because we don't have as many people in our buildings utilizing them. So we anticipate some, we just don't really have a good sense of what that might be at this time.
I understand. Anybody else have a comment or a question? My last thing I wanted to say on the budget is to really thank you for your recognition of our enrollment variability over the last 2 years and your intentions around having some more quantitative ways for recognizing our staffing needs as they relate to enrollment. It's been a very interesting time to be in Albany as our enrollment just skyrocketed for several years and then flattened and slightly declined. It's just been a very interesting place to be. So I know that that has effects on staffing, and it will be interesting to see what we're able to do with this significant budget gap. Anyone else on the budget, or are we ready to delay on that until, I believe we're scheduled to do that till next Tuesday.
Next Tuesday.
Okay. Right. Okay, so then we will move on then to the last bits of the meeting. I don't think we have any board committee reports, do we? Smith? Ms. Smith?
Right. I don't really have a report other than just to, put on the record that our next meeting is April 14th. We're keeping that date, and we will make sure that details of that meeting are posted for public accessibility. And so that's really all I wanted to add. But next, the 14th, and at 5:30 as it stands right now.
Any other committee reports?
Same thing with policy. The meeting that for this month got postponed because of all the COVID issues and budget and everything. So we're going to be meeting next week on April 8th.
Okay.
Madam President?
Yes, Mrs. Superintendent.
If I could just take a moment, you have heard some outstanding reports from our cabinet, and I know that we appreciate all the accolades and thanks that you share with us. But I want to say on behalf of cabinet, we want to thank you all for your support through this time, because it means a lot to be able to have a board that is as supportive as you are with all of the things that are going on. And then just your acknowledgement and recognition of everything that we're doing. I know sometimes I'm watching and I'm looking, and it does seem like it's overwhelming, and even hearing from you, where are we getting the time to do these things? I will extend my gratitude to every cabinet member and for their leadership within their own divisions. That's what makes this all possible, and it makes it happen on behalf of our students. I have to extend that thank you to the best cabinet that is on the planet. A strong group of individuals who are very, very smart, very talented, very creative, and able to think outside of the box, and then bring it all together in a way that it can be articulated and understood at multiple levels. And so I extend my thank you to the board, but I extend my thank you to cabinet, because this work is not easy. We have learned a different level of togetherness, even though we are not physically together. And just being able to work alongside such professional people on behalf of students, because every single conversation that we have, it's always about our students and what we can do better for them. And so thank you to our cabinet, and thank you to our board. I appreciate being able to work alongside you each and every day. So thank you.
Well, on behalf of the board, we're happy to support you, and we are so grateful to have you all there. It's been amazing to watch this district turn on a dime. It really is necessity being the mother of invention. Things that seem difficult to do happened nonetheless in a very short period of time when they had to. It's extraordinary, really. Anybody have any other business?
I had one, Dan.
Oh, go
I
ahead.
had one. Yeah, it was just a committee report. We will be meeting as a board twice before this, but for the public, the audit committee is at this point still planning to meet on Monday, April 20th. We will undoubtedly be meeting virtually. That's all.
Anyone else? Then I'd like to entertain a motion to adjourn. Motion by Dr. Chatur, second by Ms. Wilson, all in favor? That
Aye.
looks to be unanimous. Have a good night, everyone. Thanks so much.
Good night.
Good
Thank
night.
you.
Good night. Good night.
Good night.
Stay safe.